Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
It's Tuesday night, which means it's time for the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight is my co-host, Caffeinated Wolf.
What is going on, Jeff? It is good to be back. Finally, Andrew has come back home. I'm back on the High Council. It's good to be here. Look, I can't calm down. It's a Tuesday night, man. I can't be calm. You can't tell me to be calm. It's Tuesday night. It's the greatest show on a Tuesday night. It's the High Council, baby. Hail to you, Jeff. Hail to the chat. I'm excited to be here. We're going to have a great show.
And don't forget to hail our other co-host for the evening. Say hello to the one,
Script it.
the only, Script It, Doctor. I spelled your name wrong in the chat. I corrected it. I typed it out as Script It. And so we just started laughing about it.
Cool. I'm digging it.
Yeah, so you are henceforth Script It.
If Loki ever got a hold of me and turned me into a frog, I'd be Script It.
I dig it. I'm here for it.
I dig it.
I'm all about it.
Yeah, no, happy to be back, hanging out with you guys. Happy to see Andrew back here. Good topic we've got for today, everybody.
I think we're going to be tackling, despite what the thumbnail might lead y'all to believe, some people might be sick of seeing the Marvels everywhere. Plenty of people, apparently, because nobody went and saw it.
I was about to say.
They were so sick of it, they didn't even go to see it. But I think we're going to be tackling this from a bit more of a unique angle than you're probably used to.
So, folks, make sure you hit that thumbs up button to let everyone know that you enjoy this content, namely YouTube. And by the way, welcome to all of our new listeners and subscribers. Folks, check out our 2 latest videos. Apparently, the Marvels is a hot topic. So, yeah, go watch our videos. The first one's about the flop, and the other one is about, well, the post-flop. But then we have another video coming out, and we're going to talk about some of those topics tonight as well. So, folks, it's time to start tonight's show. Now, Script It and I are the 2 that have suffered through the Marvels, Andrew, so you're lucky.
For once, I'm the intelligent one on the panel.
Yeah.
Hey, every dog has his day, okay? Or every wolf has his day, whatever you want to go with.
There you go. So, you didn't have to subject yourself to this dumpster fire of a film. But like I said on Thursday night's podcast, folks, somehow the Marvels is worse than Captain Marvel. But like I said way back in 2019 when we reviewed Captain Marvel, we're going in basing our opinions on the film itself. Not about Brie Larson's opinions of white guys, not about what she said, not about what the director said, strictly on the film itself, because that's the most fair way to do it. We're not going in holding a grudge. And it's lucky that we didn't, because if I was going in hating, like, I couldn't imagine hating this movie much more than I already do. Like, it is not enjoyable. Because I've been seeing a lot of people on social media. The number one comment is, it's fun, it's fun. I think they're using the word fun to replace stupid. Because it's not a very, you know, it looks
growing up,
Ant-Man.
my mom said that to me a lot, too. Oh, you're fun.
It's going to be fun.
Kid, Andrew. You're fun.
Mom, going to the doctors isn't fun. Getting your teeth pulled isn't fun. Getting a shot isn't fun. That's what the Marvels is. It's the equivalent of getting a shot. It's like, yay, I get a needle stuck in me. Awesome.
I don't know. Based on the trailer, it looked more like having a pine cone kicked up your ass backwards.
And more like a pineapple, you know.
Oh,
there's a lot more heft to that.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm good. I'm good, actually.
I know, man.
I'm so sorry you suffered through this.
Yeah, it was not a lot of fun. But I've given my opinion on the film. I did not enjoy it. But Script It, you saw it too.
This is a thing.
Yep.
You saw it too, and you suffered as well. What did you think about the film?
Well, I thought it's not the worst of the Marvel movies, which doesn't help it
Agreed.
much. I could see a potential for a good story in that, but then again, that's not a flaw that Marvel has had with any of their movies. They actually have really great concepts. It's the execution that really determines whether it's going to be good or not. It's a very basic film. It doesn't do much. The characters don't have any arc. I understand the antagonist and the plot and why she's doing it. I just don't understand why she is the one to undertake this mission and why she's a threat. They missed out on that part.
She didn't
I
look
will say,
particularly threatening in the trailers.
yeah, I mean, I can see Marvel fans preferring to rewatch the Marvels over Captain Marvel just because the presentation of the three leads is far more digestible than the snarky, obtuse Carol Danvers from the first Captain Marvel film.
So other two actresses, because again, I have not seen the
Sure.
film, and I do not plan to, under pain of death. Do the other two actresses like bring out Brie Larson's inherent under the surface subterranean charm and make her more palatable than in Captain Marvel? Because my big thing with Captain Marvel was just it was not a good movie. None of the characters were particularly likable, though it was a fairly, I guess, well enough structured film. That's why I always say that Thor: Love and Thunder is a far worse MCU film. Just as a movie, like you can say you
It
like
is.
Thor more as a character, but Captain Marvel at least like had a coherent plot. It just wasn't particularly interesting, and neither were any of the characters involved.
I don't know if it had a coherent plot because what was the goal?
No idea
Like
what
Carol
the
lands on Earth, and then she's stopping the Skrulls, and it finds out, oh, we're being oppressed, we're refugees, and it's like there's not really a plot.
I
in
didn't
that
say it was a
movie.
good plot. I just said it was structured enough that it's like, okay, I see that there's an A and a B. We got there. Kind of.
I mean, it was here. The movie, the Captain Marvel, was directed by two different directors. One, I think, was directing only Brie Larson, which is why everything that she did not fit in the rest of the movie because a director was directing everything else around the movie, and it just didn't line up cohesively. Here, Nia DaCosta actually directed everything, and there is Brie Larson actually feels like she's in the movie with the same people that are also around her. They all feel like they're on the same page, whereas Captain Marvel, they don't. They clearly do not. The other two actors are good. There's a little bit of dynamic and chemistry. The problem is that they're not written as women trying to solve an issue. They're written as grade 9 girls, first year freshman high school girls.
I graduated high school to get away from that crap. I don't need it.
Yeah, I mean that's
and I
it.
I doubt grown ass women need that either.
Well, grown ass women aren't watching this movie.
Exactly.
It's very fantasy stuff. Like any of the potential conflict that these three would have with their relationship is quickly resolved by the hollow apology and we have to work together mentality. There's no dynamic of figuring out a way to, as adults, work together in the same way that how Captain America and Tony Stark had an issue in Avengers at the start. And you had that thing where they're just kind of like bantering back at each other. Like Tony Stark can't believe that Captain America was his dad's hero and he went off from all the time. And then Tony Stark just Captain America finds Tony Stark arrogant. And when they had to work together to keep the helicarrier up, and all Captain America do is like, it looks like it operates on electricity. Like that's their task where they actually start developing a friendship.
Form of electricity.
Yeah. That's where they start developing
lines in all
friendship.
The MCU,
we don't get any of those moments there. It's really just a paint by numbers movie. But I would say, yeah, its biggest flaw is that it was whatever they had left on the cutting room floor that would have made this the typical 2-hour Marvel film was probably not useful to the narrative, just like the Saber sub-story. The Saber story plot with Nick Fury and Kamala Khan's parents was not needed in that film at all. And what was actually needed is more of the conflict of what Carol was doing for 30 years, why this Ben Kerr or whatever heck her name is, was the self-appointed leader and why she's a threat. Her having the universal weapon in one of the quantum bands does not justify her having enough power to hold off not just Captain Marvel, but the other two of the Marvels. And then the biggest plot hole of the film which is that if all three of these Marvels are entangled because they all draw power from the same thing and it is connected to the quantum band that Miss Marvel has, why isn't the villain also swapping positions with them when she uses her power too? So it's really just it's shoddy, but the thing is, it's got a weird charm to it that I can actually see more Marvel fans preferring to rewatch this than Captain Marvel or Thor: Love and Thunder. But it's also like it's Muzak, as I said in my video. It's just there. You don't need to watch it. It's just there. It doesn't contribute anything to you. It's background noise. It's not gonna cause your ears to bleed like some of the other Marvel films that we've had recently. because again, Aman Vahani, who plays Kamala Khan, she brings energy. She seems like she's having fun. You don't hate to watch her. The creepiest thing about her is when she sees Nick Fury for the first time and she has like schoolgirl dreamy eyes that she gives to him. Like she's like in love with this guy. And it's like, that dude is 60 years older than you. And why are you looking at him like he's, not lustfully, but just like dreamy. As girls when they have that
weird. Why would she even know who Nick Fury is?
There's that too.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody.
Wait a second here. Here's one of the biggest issues with the whole Miss Marvel setup in the MCU. Like, never mind the comic books, which nobody reads. Carol Danvers was on Earth for all of 5 minutes. It's a bit of an exaggeration, obviously, for the first Captain Marvel movie, but that, and then almost literally on Earth for 5 minutes in Endgame. Where does this obsession with Carol Danvers
it's never
from
addressed? Yeah,
for Miss Marvel, it's like they were like, "Hey, she's a super fan of Captain Marvel in the comics. Let's just translate that over." Okay,
well, aside from
the character doesn't really exist on Earth in the MCU.
She's not really part of the normal setting of things, because at best you have 3 women of the Avengers: Scarlet Witch, Black Widow, and Captain Marvel. The only one that's got godlike powers that Kamala kind of knows about, because again, Scarlet Witch has kind of been hidden away in the Avengers mansion or whatever it is for compound for most of her career, is Captain Marvel. So it's like she's just gravitating towards the one woman with power for the sake of that. And it's like, I don't understand why. It's never explained in the show. It's not really explained in the film. And that really cringy.
That's the worst reason ever. It's terrible.
Yeah, they don't have a reason for it at all. There's nothing there. And I think it's because had they made, say, a proper sequel to Captain Marvel where she is on Earth doing something and kind of making herself known and was a hero, one to be aspired to, then you could understand why Kamala would be a fan of her.
Sure.
We never got that. So there's a big.
But that's the issue.
Gap.
There's one really key thing I want to dial in on there. Script it. A character worthy of being looked up to. There's nothing aspirational about Carol Danvers in the MCU.
Nope.
It's like the person you do not want to be, man, woman, or mineral. Like you don't want to be like that. She's unlikable. There's nothing charismatic about her. There's no charm. There's no, like, this person's doing so many good, selfless things. Therefore, I look up to them. That she's just a powerhouse, and that's, I'm sorry, not good enough. That doesn't constitute a good character. That doesn't constitute.
Well, she sings and dances in this movie.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
exactly. I'll tell you what.
She's a princess now.
I'll tell you what. I'm gonna rewind real quick. If Carol Danvers in the MCU had been the Brie Larson that hosted whatever it was, late night or
one of the late night shows,
one of those shows, they're all the freaking same, all mostly uninteresting. The one where she was like guest hosting and she was like laughing and smiling the whole time, and I think Jamie Foxx was on that night as well, and like they were laughing and dancing together up on the stage, and I'm like, who the hell is this? Where the hell was she? Like, all you have to do is take like even an infinitesimal amount of that charm, carry that over, and implant that into the character. So there's something there, because
they don't have the budget for that on this one. They only have $200 million.
That should be free, Jeff. Having a personality shouldn't cost $300 million.
You got to buy these actors' personalities, dude. Believe me. Okay?
You also have to write it in the script, and they did not know what they were doing in Captain Marvel. In this one here, they got closer because, again, Brie Larson has some moments where you're like, oh, I could tolerate this version of Captain Marvel way more easier than the other one because she wasn't snarky, she wasn't dismissive. She showed a range of emotions that I haven't seen Brie Larson do since Room, and that has more to do with the fact with
so that'd be anything to the right or above or whatever you want to say, whatever direction of a plank of wood, because that's basically what she was in Captain Marvel and in Endgame. And where I
don't think she was wooden enough in that. I think she was just vacuous.
You just have to have more than just power.
Yeah.
I was saying, just being a powerhouse doesn't constitute being a good character. Modern writers don't understand this. Like, oh, people aren't gravitating enough to this character. Okay, well, we're going to give them a whole bunch more powers, and we're going to call them the bestest of the bestest ever, arbitrarily, because reasons, and they still lack the most important thing for a character, and that's character. That's what makes them relatable. Being a stoic plank of wood up on the screen doesn't make you a relatable character. It doesn't make you a relatable human being for men or women. Growing up, I freaking watched the X-Men. I loved Storm. I loved Rogue. I looked nothing like them. It didn't stop me from loving those characters and gravitating towards those characters a lot. They're some of my all-time favorite characters.
Well, they didn't for character like Carol Danvers, who's a major in the Air Force. They didn't find a balance between work Carol and fun Carol. They just basically said, we're going to do flashbacks that she's fun, but not really get into it. And we're just going to keep her all business and work because they think that's what the masculine thing is. They're like, we're just going to Michael Ironside this character.
You're going to hold on. You said masculine. There's a problem there.
Oh, I said Michael Ironside.
No, you said or you started saying masculine before that.
Okay.
But funny enough, whether that was intentional or an accident, it's not untrue, and it bothers me that they try and this has been a huge issue with Disney. And Jeff, you're a toy guy, so you know this better than just about anybody. Disney, for decades upon decades, was the king of girls branding.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They were the uncontested king, basically, like outside of Barbie, right? And Polly Pocket was like a tier or so below, right? But they had all the Disney princesses, and they were on top of the world with that. And then when they bought Marvel, they were like, hey, why don't we try and get all the girls that we're already selling all of this stuff over here to like this stuff as well? But what they did in the process is that they took it away instead of like going, hey, it sounds really weird to say like, hey, little girl, come over here. That's
territory.
Weird.
That's different territory.
Well, maybe that is Disney these days. Jesus.
It's always been them. If you take a look at their
instead
child
of like
stars,
trying to bring people over to this other thing, right? And be like, hey, why don't you try, checking this out? Maybe we'll enjoy this thing, right? Mm-hmm. Instead, they were like, they looked at the little boys that were playing with their Marvel stuff, and they were like, yoink, and we're going to give this to you. Well, most girls, unless you are already in the geek space, already legit geek girls, I know a ton of them. The Saskas are in the chat right now. The Saska sisters, they're massive geeks. Their Marvel knowledge far eclipses mine, right? They're already here. They already enjoy the stuff, and they enjoy it as it was. They enjoy it when it's good. But instead, they took the stuff that was primarily a boys' demographic, gave it to the girls. The girls didn't want it. And so like, oh, well, maybe we'll just make it more for the girls, right? We'll target the girls, and they'll be our new demographic that we're targeting. Well, guess what? The girls already don't want it.
Nope.
And now the boys don't want it because of what you did to it.
Well, it's worse than that, because when Disney bought it, they bought it just like with Power Rangers. They bought it to corner the boys' market. The problem is, no one at Disney knows how to sell anything to boys.
No, they don't.
And
because
so
for decades upon decades, their focus has been girls.
Well, it's been girls since the beginning. Snow White is not a cartoon movie for boys. Like, name me a little boy that's excited to see the cartoon of Snow White. I'll wait.
Yeah, I mean, I like the old classic Snow White and all of that, but like, yeah, if I'm being real when it comes to Disney movies, like, though I may enjoy probably the vast majority of their classic animated library, I'm primarily going to gravitate towards like Aladdin and Lion King.
Which came about 60 years later. I mean, when Snow White was in theaters, any boys that went to go see that went there to see it for the Flash Gordon serials that probably debuted before it and then left. I'm telling you, like that's
Mhm.
what they did. Again, Fox Robin Hood in the 70s, no boy went to see that. Like Cinderella, no one went to see that. Sleeping Beauty, no boys went to see that. It only went, it was like little girls, moms, and maybe their parents taking them in there. That's what it was. That's why the Disney Animation Studio was suffering since its inception and why they had to gear themselves over to the parks. The closest thing that actually got a boy audience was Peter Pan, and it was not a huge little kids boy audience when that came out.
Right.
It was pretty small. They had to shift gears and become basically a tourist trap for the Disney brand to survive. Now, Disney only figured out how to sell to girls, and that's what their brand was. And there was nothing wrong with that. It was great. But Bob Eisner and Bob Iger both wanted to corner the entirety of the children's market. And every single time they would, instead of creating their own boy brands, which they came close to, they got one with Tron, something to a degree with a black hole. Science fiction worked out well. Toy Story hit both demographics but that was Pixar, and Disney just had a distribution contract with them. They hadn't purchased them yet.
Pirates of the Caribbean did well with both.
Well, when I saw it on opening day, it was me, my girlfriend, and then 4 of my buddies that were also men. Aside from my girlfriend, we were the only boys in that theater. Everybody was there to see Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom, and it was all women. It was weird.
I can logically that
liked,
makes sense, but like when I
more.
went to see those movies in theaters, there were plenty of dudes because like we're here for the swashbuckling and the snarky,
here for
Johnny Depp pirate behavior and
the jokes and the sword fights and the cannons, all that stuff. Like that's what
Jeffrey
was
Rush.
Interesting because I remember we saw it opening night, and then I remember it was the second week we went to go see it. Then it became more of like a balanced audience where you could tell like this was more of a date movie. There's almost like 50-50 guys and girls in there. But that opening night, it was packed with women. And it was really weird because we were like, well, this trailer looked like it was going to be a fun swashbuckling adventure. Why are we the only guys here?
Because Orlando Bloom. Because
Orlando Bloom is a heartthrob. Johnny Depp was still a heartthrob to that part. And that's where it was. But Disney got very lucky with that. And then they tried again with John Carter, but they realized it's costing them more money to invest in the IPs they have to try and compete with things that are already cornering the market, which was at that point, oddly enough, Star Trek, Stargate, Star Wars, Marvel, DC. They were looking for ways to try and get that. Power Rangers they had already had and have basically having to sell because they buried that within 10 years. So they screwed up there, and they didn't learn any lessons from that, which is just because you buy something doesn't mean you got to reformat it to what it is. Just like you bought it. Now just be a silent owner and let them do their thing and then just take the royalties. Exactly. Disney can't do that. No big corporation can do that because there's an arrogance to them, which is we have enough money to buy this other corporation that's successful. So ergo, whatever they were doing that made them successful, if we incorporate what we did to make us really successful to buy them, they will be even more successful. And that's never how it works.
Their arrogance, their arrogance makes it so that they are incapable of like seeing things clearly there with regards to recognizing that what they were doing to be successful with the property that was just purchased was entirely different and not in any way related to what you've been doing to be successful with your entirely unrelated thing over here. Like okay, maybe I'm crazy. You can tell me if I'm crazy. You are. That's fine. We're friends. Okay. Well, maybe not so fast.
Oh, look, you just said maybe I'm crazy, and I was just giving you confirmation because there's nothing worse in life than uncertainty. Sometimes you just need to lay it down.
I appreciate the words of affirmation, Jeff. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. And you were very quick on the draw there. That's noted. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't seem like a rocket science to be like, yeah, we've been super successful selling Disney princesses for decades. But that same strategy isn't gonna work with freaking superheroes and Spider-Man and Star Wars. It's a different audience, it's a different demographic. That's apples and oranges and kiwis. Like, it's not the same thing. You don't try to pitch them the same. You're not gonna you're not gonna put each of those fruits and all this. You're not gonna put a kiwi in an apple pie. You're not gonna put
Well,
an orange in a pumpkin pie.
for some reason, they think there's money in a lot of these terrible, terrible ideas. And apparently they thought there'd be money in a film like The Marvels. And script, I just wanted, to bounce off what you said a second ago. Like, there are other things that are worse than this in the MCU. And to prove your point too, Andrew, talking about Disney, I think Disney just goes back to what it knows because they're desperate. They know that historically what they had done with targeting the female audience works. They know that historically they can make their money that way. And this movie is an affirmation that comic book movies, while for general audiences, are 60% male according to that demographic information from
on
Deadline.
average, yeah.
Yeah, it's anywhere between 60 and 70%,
And
which
so-
isn't all too dissimilar to the comic books. Comic books are a little closer to that 70, if not.
I was going to say, I'd like
higher.
to see the statistics because honestly, for every 10 guys I see at a comic store, there's like one woman.
Yeah,
And I'm not
yeah,
gonna
you're,
use the
you're
Not a
probably right. It's-
cosplayer. You don't unless she's a cosplayer. You know
yeah,
that she's there for a
cosplayers
reason.
don't count.
Because
The
cosplayers,
cosplayers
don't count.
The cosplayers don't read the books. They'll
They don't
watch
spend
a
money.
video.
That's the point.
Yeah, the
That is the point.
cosplayers will watch a YouTube video of
Yeah,
a
we
clip
don't.
of how the character moves, their expressions,
Which is not-
that way they can emulate that, and that's the closest they're going to get.
Well, that's not even the point I was
big.
making. The point I was making is that if you see one girl in there that's not a cosplayer, you know she's legit.
Yeah.
The rest is, if you go to the conventions, most of the women you're going to see there are going to be cosplayers because that's where they go to make money. And that's kind of fine in that regard because they're there to put on a show and they know what their audience is. With Disney, there's nothing wrong with making The Marvels in concept-wise. You have 3 powerful super female women in a sci-fi adventure. That is money that, if you know how to do it well, is shooting fish in a barrel because guys like, number one, sex sells. So even if you have like,
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
a 16-year-old girl in there, don't sexify her. Just sexify the adults.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, don't do that.
You sexify
Bad
the
Disney.
adults. Let the
Bad.
kid be, the Luke Skywalker to the Obi-Wan Kenobi stuff. Even you could even throw a joke in her where she's like, I think I just need a costume more revealing, and be like, not until you're 18. That type of stuff. Like, have those relations.
Or like
there,
maybe
because
when you're older type of a remark.
every
yeah.
demographic is a potential audience that you can get. That is that's
sure.
any industry. You want to hit every demographic if you can. You're not going to please them all, but you can compartmentalize and be like, okay, we have the Disney princesses for the girls. We got the Marvel Studios for the boys. All we have to do is make sure we don't betray the audience to either one. And if there's bleed over, that is a happy accident. We cannot control it. And that's it. But the thing is, they don't want that. They want to get boys to come over to Cinderella, and they want to get the Cinderella fangirls to come over to Marvel. And they just are trying to mush them together into a homogenized pulp, as opposed to just saying, let them have their avenues, and and don't put up any barriers to prevent one audience from crossing over to another, and vice versa. That's it. Oh yeah, that's it. Because they will come. You want the people that will want to show up. You don't want to cater, manipulate something to fit a demographic that is not interested, because you then, obviously, as what's been stated many times on channels like this, and this one is as well, you then divorce yourself from the audience that made your brand valuable to begin with.
Agreed. And there are so many. At times, I don't even know what the hell I was watching. I mean, no, I don't actually mean like I couldn't comprehend what was on screen, but we've all watched movies where you wonder why these decisions were made. Like, Andrew, can you imagine a movie where the heroes are swallowed up by cats and then vomited out on Earth? Like, that's what happens in this movie. Like, to escape the Saber headquarters, all the Flurkins swallow the people because they're out of escape pods, and then they just vomit everywhere. And it's like the dumbest thing I've ever. I guess it's supposed to be funny. I just missed the joke and all that.
It was a sketch. Basically, it's like a number of the escape pods are damaged, so they're inoperable, and they have no other way to get them out. They only have a handful left. So because Goose, the other Flurkin from the first movie, has somehow laid eggs, and now who fathered those eggs, I don't know, has laid eggs, and now all these CGI kittens are around the station gobbling up the crew so that they can be safely transported to Earth. And it serves nothing of the story. It's there really just to create a break so that we're not watching these three Marvel's characters for 98 minutes straight.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to comprehend everything that was just said, and I don't think I want to.
Yeah, you don't have to. Like
That
just be grateful you didn't see it.
So unbelievably stupid. And this is so pathetic. And Script, you hit the nail on the head when you said, make sure you're catering first and foremost to your primary demographic. Make sure that those people who are your guaranteed money are going to show up, because then you know what you have? Guaranteed money. Everybody else who is already predisposed to be interested in something like this will then, if they hear by word of mouth that it's enjoyable, that it's a good time, that it's fun, that it's good, they will then come and show up. And thereby you grow your audience, and maybe they'll be more apt to show up for the next one. Look, as comic book fans, we love female characters. You said sex sells. It's true. We love attractive looking characters. This is how it's always been. I grew up reading comics in the 90s and early 2000s. Okay, that's when comics were just like full bore. Let's make them as hot as possible. Both the dudes who had like muscles in places where I'm pretty sure you can't have muscles, but it was fine. It was all right, cool. I guess his traps have traps or something, because why not?
Rob Liefeld's anatomy.
Where your chest is 47 feet wide. I just love that.
Something like that, right? And that the female characters are hot as smoke as well. And it was fine, right? And we're gonna show up. That's what we want. Like, had they pitched the Marvels in a way that had been for people who were fans of old school Carol Danvers and old school Monica Rambeau, who were badass characters in their own right. Like, they were never A-list characters, but they were C's moving into B's at like the height of their careers.
With a nice set of D's.
They could. I see you.
Sorry, I'll mute myself while I continue to cackle at that joke.
And they could have. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that actually pisses me off. And I can speak with authority on this too, because I've put in the time. I've spent the money. Okay. I've spent more money on this hardcover collector's set right here of the early 2000s run on Miss Marvel than probably all of the Captain Marvel stan accounts combined on social media have ever even looked at a comic book. I would have been 100% on board for a movie pitched that way. Give me Carol Danvers with a personality. Give me Monica Rambeau with a personality. Sure, make them powerful. This is a powerful character. When she's using her binary powers, she's a freaking beast. But that's not what makes her interesting. What makes her interesting is the fact that she knows she has flaws, and she knows she's not as good as she could be. She wants to be better, and she's going to strive to be better, and is cognizant of the fact that she's going to fail a lot along the way. One of the most fantastic things about this run was the fact that this takes place after Civil War. She sided with Tony Stark during Civil War. After the fallout of that, she gets asked to reform the Avengers. And she gets asked to bring in some people to form this new Avengers team, whom she tried to lock up not long ago. It makes for some really interesting storytelling and character work.
Well, I just don't think the character is right to be put on film. Like, just flat out, I'll say it. It's not. What can you get? Because here's the thing. You're talking about taking a character that has decades of a story. You got to put that on screen. Go back to the origin, or go back to her biggest moments. What can you glean to put in an attractive package? With Spider-Man, Batman, the X-Men, all the iconic ones, you can just tell, hell, their first adventure is good enough to kind of put on screen.
Yep.
And to
Captain
your
Marvel,
point, with that, yeah, you're right. Like, if we're just basing it off of an origin alone, that'd be really predicated on like the actual Captain Marvel.
Well, Miss
Marvel.
Marvel would be the love story origin because she'd have to fall in love with Captain Marvel or Marvel. He would have to sacrifice himself to save her, and then by way of that, transferring her powers over to him. And then the twist would be that Marvel didn't really die, and now he's part of the Vanguard leading the Kree to invade Earth, and Miss Marvel's the only one powerful enough to kind of stop that Vanguard. That would be your origins film that would work for her. But the thing is, she has a ridiculous storyline. I don't know if it was in the 80s or 90s, but she gets it's a little bit similar to the season 2 of Next Generation episode where Deanna gets impregnated and then gives birth to a child that's not really her child, and then has to deal with that.
I want to say that was the 80s.
It might be the 80s. Like Carol
I'm
Danvers
pretty
gets
sure that was the
impregnated,
80s. That was weird.
gives birth to a child that's not her
Avengers
child.
200.
The child grows up to be a man, and then she falls in love with that child. It was really messed up. And then I think a few issues later, she's like screams at the Avengers for not believing her or helping her in some sort of very, proto SJW feminist, like fourth wave feminist bitch fest, so to speak.
Right.
So yeah, the stories
Every
that you have
single
are few and far
character though
between.
has had a completely retarded storyline that I think
Yeah.
you can name your favorite character of all time, and they have a storyline pre modern era, even like pre mid to late 2010s and onward, where everything is garbage. Or at least that's disingenuous.
They had their
Most
peaks and
of
valleys
everything
for
is
sure. Marvel
exactly.
did.
There were stories that were just like, what is this? And fans back then made it pretty clear. Like, what is it? Clone conspiracy. Clone
Oh God,
Saga.
yeah.
But
One
more day, like all of these with Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's one of the most beloved superheroes of all time, right? But he's got stories that people just almost universally just abhor.
And then if you want to keep it in the Captain Marvel business just for a little bit more, so Monica Rambeau is the second Captain Marvel, who she's treated horribly in the comics in the sense that she kept on being renamed. She never got to keep her code
like
name.
4 or 5 different names.
But she was a Coast Guard who then got fired for violating the rules because someone was doing illegal operations on an oil rig, which resulted in her getting her powers where she could, cross through spectrums and whatnot. But she had she showed up in a red bikini to lure the bad guys out so she could find out what they were doing, and then finds a rejected costume on a movie set and wears that as her uniform, which basically just reveals her legs. It's a really sexy costume. And then as she became more well-known and then got recruited to the Avengers, she basically had a full bodysuit. But she also was an interesting character because she came from a law enforcement background where all the other Avengers, except for maybe with the exception of Captain America because of the military background, she had an advantage, and then she became the leader. But I don't recall a whole lot of significant landmark-ish stories for her, like even her origin story. It's just about her getting the powers as opposed to her doing something right away with it to stop a bad guy that pertains to the original part of how she got her powers, like in the way that Spider-Man has, or Captain America and the Red Skull and Iron Man and Ironmonger or the Mandarin or whatever variation of origin you want to play with there. So it feels a little lacking in that area, but there's definitely potential. And that's the other part too, is what we're getting here is instead of just taking a look at what worked and finding a way, well, how can we reorganize this to fit within the MCU as they did with Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, and build off the potential of what the comics were going towards, but also didn't quite meet up to. Because again, when you're writing comic books, especially on a monthly basis, you're on a very tight schedule, which means that you just got to get the story out there, and it's got to be as refined as possible so that artists can get to it and it can make its print date. It's a very narrow window comparatively to when you're writing a screenplay, where you could be anywhere from 6 months to 18 months just on the screenplay itself before you even get back to notes and redrafts from studios.
Right.
So you have a lot more
edits,
time to
all of
really
that,
refine and get that story in great shape for it to be, put into production. And I don't feel like, especially when Marvel kind of shifted gears after after Winter Soldier, that they were actually spending that much time in trying to make these things good, because I will say I'll still stand by this. When I heard that they got Brie Larson to play Carol Danvers before they got the script or anything like that, I said that's actually a rather inspired choice because she has the range to do a character that could do justice. The problem is that character that they should have put in the script was not there. I don't know who that was. That was not Captain Marvel. That was not Carol Danvers. That was not anyone I recognized. When it comes to the Marvels, we got 1 6-inch step closer to a Carol Danvers in the sense that she had we got to see Brie Larson with range, a little bit of range, not the best of range, because there wasn't really much on the page for her to do anyways. But it's like, okay, I can see now where I was 5-6 years ago when they announced that she was going to be playing the characters. Like, yeah, you're scraping the surface of what she could do. The thing is,
Right.
you've given her pages to read, which are nothing of the character to actually make people like her, because their plan was to make Captain Marvel step into Tony Stark's position of the Avengers.
Right, yeah, she was kind of billed as like the new head of the MCU.
But it fell apart because they tried to make the movie mean something more than just being a movie. They tried, script. I didn't want to cut your legs out when you're talking about how you could have made her more palatable and had a relationship with Marvel. But when your idea, and this is where the first Captain Marvel is completely different than the Marvels, but when your initiative is to send a message or make a social statement out of a superhero movie first before telling the movie or telling the story of the film, well, it falls apart. And that's why this movie is an absolute failure, because they like to tell you, any movie, they like to tell you that this first movie was such a great achievement. Look, anything between the 2 Avengers movies made money. Black Panther made a shitload of money because it was before Infinity War. Then the next one made $400 million and change less. That is why
Ant-Man and the Wasp did fairly well, and it was between Avengers Endgame and Infinity War too. People forget about that one.
And now look at the Quantumania. It did not. It was terrible. But that's the thing. All of these plans and ideas and directives they wanted to do with the character all fell apart 4 years ago when they made it stand for something by putting it out when they did, by having special interest groups buy tickets and give it to girls as an empowering thing. If Barbie would have been sold on that, Barbie wouldn't have made the money it made because people would have rolled their eyes and went, another one of those movies. Those types of movies just they don't equal long-term success. They equal flash in the pan. You get some social media accolades because the producers and the bigwigs are kind of out of touch. The people that think social media is as important as it is, look, we get it. It's part of everyday life. But like we always say, a like and a retweet is not a movie ticket sold. And so all the online support, all that online support that, we're going to go after the bigots and the sexists for, attacking Captain Marvel and changing Rotten Tomatoes. Okay, you spent more money to do all those things, and here's the result. It wasn't the first one, because no matter what you put, that would have been a hit. But this is the end of it. And I want to know, do you guys think we'll ever see this character again? Because, Script, I don't disagree with that. She's more tolerable and not as hard to watch and a completely different character at times. I don't think this character has any value outside of cameos. There won't be a Marvels 3. And if this other Avengers team shows up, I say she gets relegated to the back seat.
Oh, most definitely. They basically ruined a fantastic opportunity for, just like what they did with She-Hulk. They ruined a fantastic opportunity to have a really fun female character that if they did it authentically, there'd be no counter arguments to bigots or sexism or misogyny or anything of that nature. If anything, I'd say there's more misandry towards the Marvels than ever because the women didn't show up to watch it.
Nope.
And
right, well, that was the thing. You're going to market it towards women. You're going to tell the men to piss off. Then you're going to blame the men when the men actually are showing out in larger numbers than the women are.
Well, they told the men to piss off and they still showed up. It's we don't care. Call us whatever you want. We're going to see it. And then the thing is that it's not good enough to warrant a revisit. Doesn't have any of the anticipatory market, doesn't have nostalgia, doesn't have the whole we want to show support to this. There's nothing to it.
Well, that's why they had to market that final trailer with freaking member berries and nostalgia bait from the first 3 phases of the MCU. There were scenes in there from the first Captain Marvel movie, from Avengers. You had a freaking narration over the first half of the trailer, at least the first half, from Nick Fury. from the first Avengers film. It's because those films had something of value. Those films had charm. None of them were perfect. However, they had things that people could connect with because the characters felt like people and people that you would want to connect with, whether it was for something aspirational or something that was based out of a struggle. You know, Tony Stark did a lot of maturing in the first three phases of the MCU. And
Mhm.
there are probably a lot of people out there that were like, yeah, like maybe in my younger years, I was a bit of a prick and a half. And I wound up maturing through difficult circumstances. Sometimes life has to kick you in the nuts and kick you in the ass in order for you to shape up and realize, yeah, I'm being kind of a little shit. Maybe I should mature and start acting like an adult. I should be grown, maybe. I don't know. And the first three phases of the MCU showcased a lot more of that, even in just one film, than these two most recent phases. I think that this is, I don't know if I could, with certainty, say that this is the last that we'll see of Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, though something tells me that she probably has no interest in playing the character anymore at this point. And I think it would be in Disney's best interest to not sink any more money into this character at this point, certainly, because people are obviously not interested. They
Do you
didn't
think
give us
that'll
a
trickle
reason
down to
to be
Marvel
interested.
Comics?
Well, that would be predicated on people buying the comics to begin with. They weren't. People
point.
already weren't. Dude, since Kelly Sue DeConnick, I have said this a million times. If they had just kept the same writer, Brian Reed, give her the suit, give her the name, Captain Marvel, fine, whatever. Like, keep the character's characterization, her personality the same. Like, that would have still been a solid book. Would have been as good as Amazing Spider-Man at the time? No. But it would have been a solid book and a decent seller, too. Captain Marvel has been rebooted since 2012 when Kelly Sue DeConnick did the first Captain Marvel relaunch with
Sounds about right.
Carol Danvers. Since then, that book has been rebooted like 8 or 9 times. Its sales just like it'll peak with the first issue or two, and then it'll just not like, and not in the way that comic books usually do, because comic books, because the speculator market, collector's market, you're always going to have your number one sell probably at least 50% more than your number two. 50 to 60% is usually probably your safe range. And that's generally how it holds. Your real measure is like, okay, how does it hold from issue 2 to 3 and so forth? It's always like this with the Captain Marvel books because people will buy the number one. And then that's basically it. If they had kept that characterization,
yeah.
well, I mean, it's been that way for a while, really.
It's
But
been that way since about the 80s, because when you take a look at the numbers in the 60s, Fantastic Four sold really well, but Fantastic Four number 2 sold more. And then Fantastic Four number 3 sold even more because
yes, but that's because in the
brand new.
80s is when the comic book industry became a little more collector focused, is probably
Yeah,
why.
because then they had value, resale
yes,
value for the
correct.
secondary market. And that's
Yeah,
why
they
have
had changed up the type of paper that they were using, type of covers that they were doing.
Well, they were doing it so that they could sell it 10, 15 years later. So half of your audience was actually just there to buy it for resale for a decade later. The other half was generally interested in whether or not this is going to be a good book. And then a vast majority of them would usually stick with number 2, 3, 4, but it would only ever decline if different artists came involved, different writers came involved, storylines weren't doing well. Then word of mouth, of course, because that's always going to be, because that's how the generations are, especially, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, so forth. This is one of the things I learned. One of my friends, he's best friends with the owner of the Silver Snail, which is a big comic book shop in the greater Toronto area.
Mhm.
And they basically say, yeah, like if you have a brand new comic, the first issue of that, mostly the collector's market is buying up all the issues. And then you're very lucky if you get 50% of that as your fans that like it to buy the second book. And then from there, it's basically, if the story's good, you'll probably have minor growth or minor decline, almost negligible. And if
or
the
at
story's
minimum,
great, you'll get a
see
demand
kind of
request for it.
steady numbers.
Yeah, you'll see something steady. If the story is great, you'll get a demand for it, which basically means that you have to order more to fill the demand. And if the story's bad, nobody will talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's just a variation of it. But yeah, you're absolutely right that in this generation right now, it's you're losing 50% of your audience after your number one because of people that are banking in 15, 20 years that number one issue is going to be worth exponentially more than what they paid for it. And
Correct.
what's
I hate that
crazy,
about
especially
comics.
over at Image and DC, they overprinted so much that it ended up making it not worth it ever, because so many people, too many people, kept too good care of it, to the point where I could probably get an Ultimate Spider-Man #1 for what, $50 first printing.
That's
Um,
gone down in price. It used to be about 80.
yeah, it's probably fluctuated down a bit. That sounds about right.
I'm not going to go off on a tangent on Ultimate Spider-Man, but that series, man, I have a lot of problems with it.
Honestly, I'm not a fan.
Uncle Ben with a ponytail, that was a red flag for me.
I mean, even less on the design side, like on the story side, I was like, okay, so I get conceptually what you might have been going for here. For me, the New 52 was kind of the same. It was like, I get it. You're trying to bring these characters to a brand new generation. But the fact of the matter is, kids that were already predisposed to probably enjoying these kind of things, their parents probably enjoyed these kind of things, and their parents were probably like, their dad was probably showing them old Amazing Spider-Man issues and bringing them up on that, or bringing them up on Claremont and Lee's X-Men, things like that, or even Wilsh Portatio, before Lee, and all of that. So I don't think that those, like, they weren't the same kind of modern reimaginings that we think of today, which completely shit all over everything, but they were still a modern reimagining for that time that were ultimately just not necessary, I don't think. I mean, Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Spider-Man sold well enough, but I wasn't on board with it. I wasn't really a fan. Like, 616 Peter, I care piss all about everything else. But
You
the
don't
fact
want
is,
Ultimate Captain Marvel?
no, I don't want. I would like. Here's what I would like, because as you gentlemen are, and everybody in the chat, I would presume, we're all legitimate geeks here, right? We don't want to be bitching about this stuff. We don't want to hate this stuff. Nothing would make me more happy than to be excited about going to the theater a couple times a year for a big ass, like, highly produced, big budget production superhero film of some of my favorite characters that I loved growing up. Like, that would make me so happy. The fact of the matter is, that's not what we're getting anymore. And that's unfortunate, because now they're just giving us bad material. For a while, for a little bit, there was a window there, and there's some bleed over still. It's just all the woke crap, right? All the ideology insertion. In the comics, these writers utilizing what should be escapist fantasy for people who enjoy such things. They use that as a platform and turn these comic books into proselytization pamphlets. And that's not interesting. And so we walked away. They're doing the same thing with the movies. I wish that they would about face. I really do, because I would rather enjoy this stuff.
The Marvels doesn't have that in it at all.
Yeah,
that's what you were saying before the stream.
Yeah, because Script It, you and I had seen it. The first one, people could talk about man hating or whatever you want to call it. This one doesn't do it. I found it frustrating, the frantic pace that it had in the opening. Like, when the three characters kept switching bodies. Like, I like a nice fast pace. Like, I enjoy, we'll just use Marvel for an example, like Infinity War, when they're fighting in New York City and it keeps cutting from different thing to different thing to different thing. I like it. I don't like in a film or a story where there's a bunch of cuts and edits, but nothing really of value
occurs.
keeps changing. Yeah, thank you. Nothing of substance occurs. It's just like boom, jump, and it's like, I don't know. It felt like a TikTok movie where it's like you watch it for a couple seconds and something else happens. It feels so inconsequential as a movie, and I don't really watch a lot of people in our sphere, so I'm sure people are saying it's woke and man hating and this and that, but like, as somebody who talks about this stuff as honestly as possible, I didn't see that. I just saw a really dumb movie where the character motivations were dumb. And here's the big problem too. If you weren't watching the shows on Disney Plus, you're not going to care about this stuff. And you shouldn't have to watch 25 hours of television for a 90-minute movie that cost $300 million roughly to make. It's the worst formula in the history of filmmaking.
That's terrible.
Well, the thing is, the television
when you say
series
it out
costs
loud,
as
that
much
sounds
as the
so
movie.
dumb.
Well, the worst part is that 25 hours cost as much as that 90-minute movie. That's even worse.
That blows my mind, especially with was it Secret Invasion costing $220 million? Oof.
That's such a
which you don't
horrible
see a cent of
mismanagement
that
of a
on
movie budget.
It really is. Now, to your point, Jeff, Nick Fury may have a lot of jokes, but he's not talked down to. He's not demeaned. He's actually quite respected. Even the big black guy that's like 300 years old, he's not the butt of jokes. He's actually, people actually like him. I thought it was kind of, I understood the joke, the endearing joke of Kamala Khan's father giving him financial advice. And then the punchline being that he's 300 years old. And he's like, well, it's never too late, I'm like, there were some legitimately okay jokes in that movie. It's like, is this really the time for the jokes here?
Agreed.
And Nick Fury was still competent in what he's doing, except for the fact that I saw a screener, which means that I did not see it bootlegged or anything like that. I saw a screener. One of my friends is connected to the movie, showed it to me, and after watching, I'm like, well, why did Saber malfunction? What happened? Did I miss something? Why is it broken? Is it because of the eggs? What's going on? Like, I couldn't understand why Saber was in trouble at all in that story. It just happened, and they just had to deal with it, and it bugged me because I'm like, why did they keep this in at all? Just to keep Nick Fury, to keep Samuel Jackson on screen for minimum minutes in his contract or what have you? I couldn't wrap my head around it. But the thing is that, yeah, the only thing that you could quite argue is woke is it's 3 female leads. And I'm like, I wouldn't call that a qualification for woke.
Qualify as woke on its
Yeah,
own.
I wouldn't
like
call
if it was
qualify
3
as woke.
female leads and then they were very pointedly, very deliberately talking down to and like disrespecting and shitting on literally every single male character around them and acting like they were better by no other measure than just by being a female, that I would count as
And that is not in the
ideology
movie
insertion.
at all.
Yeah.
And
so what you're saying, Jeff, as I understand, Jeff and Script It, because that's not going away anytime soon.
I'm fine with it.
Is that movies can be bad just by being bad. It's not always a matter of the film is woke. It's some things just suck because they suck. It's a poor pacing or a poor cut on the cutting room floor, or maybe poor performances by the actors. Any number of other easily objectively measurable things that you could apply to any other film, woke, anti-woke, or in between. Sometimes it just sucks.
Yes. And that's the truth of the nature. Like, listen, we can all detest woke, and that's fine. But overall, if you have a really, really great movie that happens to have a couple of woke elements in it, people will ignore the woke elements. But if you have a really bad movie that has a lot of woke elements in it, people might gravitate to woke elements and think that's the source of the problem, and it's not.
Yeah,
it really isn't. There's a lot of good.
It's become a hyper-emphasized thing and almost the scapegoat rather than, okay, can we actually objectively look at this film?
Exactly. And the thing is, just purging it doesn't solve the inherent problem, which is the fact that it's a lack of effort. And that's one of the things I did on my channel. You can go back and watch my Batwoman reviews, my Star Trek Discovery reviews, Mandalorian reviews. I'm still not favorable to the Mandalorian. I judged it for wasting a lot of time. But for the most part, I don't even bring up the concept of identity politics or wokeism with regards to the problems, because I'm like, that's just one symptom of things. That's just a marketing ploy. That's an angle used to try and hide the mistakes, which are at the core issues, which is they're not putting in the effort to actually make this story any good.
And then I love that is entirely correct. I'm gonna piggyback off of it because sometimes this plays into exactly what we're talking about here. And I want to hone in on what you said there, a marketing ploy, because what these directors, writers, the studios, what they're doing is that they're making these things for their peers. You should not be making these things for your peers. Your peers aren't paying you money. Your peers are getting a free pass to the premiere of the film. They're not giving you money for your project. The people that you should be worrying about are the actual audience. And the marketing ploy that's so accurate, because as an example, I'm going to use the Dungeons & Dragons film as an example. The writer directors, I forget their names. In one of the interviews that they did about the film, they talked about, we love emasculating male leads, and we love doing this, that, and the other. It was a whole bunch of like bullet point, like cookie cutter, super hyper leftist ideologue talking points, right? Well, then you watch the film, and I watched the film with that knowledge, that interview in mind, being like, they said this shit, right? Like, all right, so now I gotta have eyes like a hawk and be looking out for this. It's not in the film. It's not in the movie. The movie's actually quite good. As somebody who's played D&D for a long time and really enjoys and can pick out some of the things that it's like, oh, I can tell that there was actually some love and care put into this. Like this feels like a campaign that's like only slightly going off the rails. Like a group that wants to have fun while they're playing at the table, but at the same time, they do also want to complete the campaign. So they are getting things done, but they're just kind of stumbling along the way. It was great. It was not a perfect film, but it was a fun film. And the thing I want to hone in on here is that what we were just talking about, the woke doesn't always make the movie. You just said it. Script. There's a tolerable, and it's really small. It's a threshold. Everybody's threshold's different, right?
Absolutely.
Everybody's threshold's different. Look at the Barbie film. Like there was definitely some stuff in there, but that film did gangbusters. They pitched it to the target audience. They pitched it to the girls, the women that grew up playing with Barbies and just wanted to have a night and an excuse to get away from their boyfriends and their husbands, get all dolled up, throw on the makeup, throw on the pink dress, the high heels, and go see a movie, right? That's all they cared about.
Also, too, Barbie's unique because it's a toy that has meaning to every person. It's a different meaning for every person with that toy. Nobody had the same exact experience. The superheroes, it's one story we're all following, so the story's going to have to connect with us in a different way. But the novelty of Barbie mixed with the way it's played, same with Super Mario. You know, each Mario game is a different experience. I don't think Marvel can ever replicate Barbie. I'm not just talking about success, but I don't think they could ever market any other properties like that because they're a story. Barbie's an idea, and the kid fills in the idea. And I think that's what makes it special, even though I hated the movie.
Yeah. I actually thought the movie was kind of fine because it hits all the hallmarks of a satire, and I don't even think all the people involved in making a movie were aware of it, which makes it even more enjoyable. And I especially love that speech about how difficult it is to be a woman because every single reason that makes it difficult for a woman is as a result of women. Like, that's just the thing. It's all about women judging each other. And it's like, oh, that's great irony. And I understand why some people didn't pick up on the irony because it definitely fits into the preachiness of feminism. But at the same time, it's like the source of the problem is that, you know, she's like, you can't be fat. You can't be thin. You can be thin, but not too thin. I'm like, well, who cares about that more than anything other than women? Right. Like you're ignoring the source of the problem. And I think that was hysterical. But to that point, one thing that you can't dispute is much like in the earlier days of Marvel and much Barbie, the people behind it, regardless of the politics, they understood what they were making and what they were targeting to. The other aspect is that Hollywood always does make stuff for themselves. The ones that are successful are the ones that happen to get lucky and actually hit a chord with the audience.
Or can at least mask what they're doing for themselves in a way that the true core demographic of whatever they're creating can hone in on it still and enjoy it. Like, I guarantee the vast majority of the women that went to see Barbie, because clearly a lot of them did, right? The movie did gangbusters, absolute gangbusters. And that was a marvel in marketing, honestly. The marketing for that film was off the chain. But they just pitched it, like I said, as something that's fun for you to get with your girls and go see, have a good time with, reminisce, right? Get dolled up for no other reason than to go enjoy a Barbie movie, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee the vast majority of the women that went to go see that, and certainly like if they brought, though I hope not too many or too young of children went to see it, because there was some stuff that I heard that were in it. But they weren't thinking about any of that other stuff. They were just going there because Barbie, because branding and marketing. And they went out of, they left the theater probably just being like, oh, it was a fun time. Like that's all I needed out of it. And I mean, I'd say that the numbers that the movie did speak to that.
The numbers speak to that because again, we know for a scientific fact that a blatantly woke film does not succeed. And
Yes.
Barbie succeeded, so therefore it can't be blatantly woke, which means that it can have some in there, but it doesn't have enough of it. And here's the other part too. Barbie in that character is humiliated and goes through a terrible thing, but perseveres to the end. Ken in that movie also is humiliated, but perseveres and comes out better at the end.
Mhm.
Those are normal.
And he was most people's favorite character.
He is, because he's endearing, because that is what makes a hero good. If Luke Skywalker, when we first introduce him, he is a farm boy who gets a little bit belittled by his uncle, but he's doing so out of love to be responsible. He's a whiner. He's argumentative. He's arrogant, and he needs to get his butt kicked by the sand people and Obi-Wan to save him before he starts realizing that the world is dangerous. That is why we liked Luke Skywalker. If he did the things that Rey did, which is he went and investigated the sand people and then beat the crap out of him, we'd be like, who the heck is this guy? Like, what the heck? We wouldn't be endearing with that. You treat your main characters badly, or have the universe kind of treat them badly so that they can rise up above it and show that they are actually worth something to be rewarded to. The moment you manipulate the universe to try and treat them better than what they actually are is where you get Mary Ray Sue. And that's boring. And we don't want that. So you need to have your characters go through crap in order for us to reveal them. The other aspect too, and this is the hardest thing to do, is that when you're dealing with an existing IP, catering to that audience is really, really difficult, because you can go to every single outlet where you can meet that audience and ask them a set of questions, and you'll be lucky if you get 10% bleed over, because everybody has their own interpretation. Everybody has their own direction of how their favorite franchises, their favorite characters need to go. You cannot manufacture or force the sweet spot there. You just have to pray that you're somehow in sync with the vast majority, or present your point of view in such a convincing way that other people will accept it. A lot of people really hated the idea that Michael Keaton was being cast as Batman in 1989, but they presented
and now he's like considered the best one ever, right?
He's considered one of the top 3 favorites. And the reason being is that the execution and the presentation of why he was picked and what story they were putting him in sold audiences on the idea. That is your job as a filmmaker and a storyteller. You cannot cater to what the audience wants specifically, because all their wants are all vastly different, because they're all individuals, and that's a great thing. The only thing you can do is present a really great inventive argument of the character that, if you're lucky, will appeal to the masses, and if you're not lucky, people will reject it. In which case, you learn, you struck out, okay, go back to the drawing board, do something different. That's how it works. That's Hollywood in general, because again, since its inception, there's always been more bad movies than good. That's why the good movies stand out. And they stand out because they just make a better argument and appeal to a different audience in ways that audiences find intriguing. And there's no way to formulate it. There's no way to put it on a spreadsheet to mask it. There's no amount of questionnaires you can give to every single person on the planet to try and find out exactly what it is. Because sometimes, and this is the sad truth, fans know what they love. They don't necessarily know what they want. The what that they know is they want stuff that they love. Well, how do you figure out what they love? Well, you kind of have to take a swing for it. Just like when dating, you see an attractive lady or attractive guy, if that's your preference, and you're like, I'm going to go see if they're interesting and worthy. And if they're jerks, you hate them, you struck out. But if they're awesome and it kicks off, you're happy. There's no way you could have controlled the outcome. You're stuck there, but at least you tried. And that's the other part too. What we're seeing right now is a lack of really trying, at least in the fundamentals of things. They try with the concept. The concepts are good. I have no problem with the concept of any of the Marvel MCU films. The concepts, the ideas, the problems, they're fine. The execution is like, well, you're really just phoning in the execution. Wow, we're dealing with Kang and we're dealing it in the quantum realm. That's very interesting. We could have fun with that. What do? He needs a power source, and it's shrunk. And there's all these other Rick and Morty species flopping around the quantum world. It's like, you're really betraying the premise that you have here. The premise for Captain Marvel. Bad guy is upset that her planet's destroyed as a result of civil war because Carol Danvers destroyed their leader. Basically a power gap issue. As for how the sun darkened, I don't know how that happened, but regardless. So what does the bad guy want to do? Well, she wants to get revenge on Captain Marvel and restore her planet. And she has a twofold plan, which is steal the water, air, and sun from the 3 planets that Carol Danvers personally has an attachment to, so that she can suffer the same way the Kree suffered. Great. Easy to understand story. How do they execute it? Well, they basically kind of adopt Spaceballs plot points and functions and how to do it without any of the charm or humor. And my thumbnail has the thing. Go see my video. The thumbnail is brilliant. But they also they don't give us an escalation of threat. It's like, well, we saw Carol Danvers go toe-to-toe with Thanos, and if he didn't grab that Power Stone and punched her, she would have kicked his ass. So how is this regular Kree soldier with a universal weapon and a single quantum band able to stand toe-to-toe alone with Carol Danvers? Like, there's no strange attractor to allow us to realize that she's a threat. There's no consequence to what happens if Hala is restored. Will the Kree Empire take over the 25% of the galaxy that they once ruled for generations? What would that mean? Like, we get none of that in this thing. It's a faulty. It's a movie that betrays its own premise, and it doesn't live up to its own premise in the execution. And as a result, it's bad. But I mean, I'm rating it against like Iron Man, Captain America, First Avenger, Winter Soldier, and I'm like, it's in the bottom 10 out of all the MCU films, but it's not at the very bottom. And and I'm trying to measure it against the best in the MCU, because if you measure it against the worst, you're lowering the bar for yourselves and playing into the hands of the studios that don't want to put in the effort to make good movies. And primarily Disney. Disney doesn't care right now. Warner Brothers is trying.
Disney is in a position right now where they really need to start caring.
Exactly. Like, you have to take a look at, all right, this is our franchise. What is the best movie that fans love in this? Great. All right, what do they respond well to this? They responded well to these types of characters, this type of conflict, and this type of resolution, and the catharsis. Great. So we know those are the tools needed. How do we reformat those tools to work with these characters in this story? And how do we make it as what's been going on recently, toyetic, which basically means where's the gear porn, where's the action figure stuff that can go along with this? Listen, I know a lot of people, especially girls, that they would love to have either a Ms. Marvel, like traditional Carol Danvers, Ms. Marvel action figure or doll that they would just put in on the dresser or something as part of their geekdom. Same thing with like She-Hulk and Black Widow. My God, so many women I knew purchased Black Widow costume for Halloween in 2010. It was nuts how many girls wanted to dress up like Black Widow and actually started investing in parts of the character, and shocked that, she had that she was part of the comics and then also had a relationship with Hawkeye. She's like, really? The purple bow and arrow guy?
Hawkeye was like a C-lister until the Avengers film. Let's
and he gets cucked by Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Most of the MCU characters weren't, A-listers. Like, no. And it's interesting how Marvel keeps trying.
Most of the Avengers in general. Copy that.
Agreed. Like, the Hulk, in like the grand scheme of it, the Hulk was the biggest character in that movie before the MCU started, because the Hulk had a TV show, cartoons, video games, shit that other characters didn't have. And and 2 films. But
he was still like a B-lister.
Oh yeah.
The only A-lister would have been, and it wasn't even in the movie, Spider-Man. I wouldn't have considered a single one of the Avengers, like in that opening Avengers team in the MCU. I wouldn't have considered a single one of them A-listers.
In the 70s, the Hulk was the brilliant character.
That's true. But he hadn't been in a long time.
Well, he's a very difficult character to do, because the gimmick is normal guy loses a temper, becomes a wild beast that destroys things around him. It's like that gets boring really quick. And they made a lot of efforts. They tried to make Bruce Banner's consciousness active in the Hulk form for a bit. They then tried to make Bruce Banner a lot like Reed Richards, in that he built these massively impressive inventions that made him incredibly rich and wealthy, but he's still nomadically bouncing around from town to town. He's a tricky. That's one thing with Marvel. Some of the characters they have are very tricky to adapt into a film or television model. The Fantastic Four is a principal one, because Fantastic Four, it's a dysfunctional family. Ben Grimm and Reed Richards are best friends for reasons we can't quite fathom. We have
very Reed Richards conflicting personalities.
Yeah, and also like they're both very smart, but in different avenues of intelligence. Reed Richards and Sue Storm are in love and they're married, and then you have the loser Johnny Storm, who's just there because Sue has to take care of her.
Why you gotta talk down on my boy Johnny like that? That's nice.
Only because I really think his initial character development was cool, or character premise is cool, but so many writers just crapped on him and made him a fool for the sake of plot, that it's like only when you get to see him paired up with Spider-Man does he actually feel like a character. At least that's my interpretation. I'm still catching up and rereading old Fantastic Four stories, but How often is it that Johnny Storm plays right into the villain's hand? That is so
Well, he's a
obviously playing
hothead.
right into the villain's hand.
He's a hothead, and they make that maybe a little bit too on the nose. And I'm not going to pretend to be a savant when it comes to Fantastic Four, but at least what I do know, he's a bit of a hothead, and that's supposed to be like very deliberate, very on the nose. And
he's
yeah,
a
it gets, and he's definitely, yeah, absolutely, by a bit, he's the youngest of the squad. So I don't necessarily have a complete issue with that. It's when that gets overused and regurgitated as a plot point and a plot device far too frequently, and just far too much quantity. So like both within frequency's sake, in a specific window of time, as well as just over the course of time. How many times are we doing this, right? How many times do we have to have him be the reason everything went to hell because he's too much of a hothead? Like, you can do that here and there, and it makes sense. I love, just like I love alliteration when it comes to comic book stuff. I love some of the corniness. I love some of the on the nose stuff. So I don't have a problem with the character that literally turns into a human torch being a bit of a hothead, and that getting him in some hot
I
water.
think it's fantastic. But every time
But
I'm
it's
reading
when that's
like
overused, it's an issue.
yeah, when I'm reading him in like the 70s and the 80s, I'm wondering, he is literally like Reed Richards, if he actually cared about this family, he would either discipline Johnny or he'd kick him out of the team, in which case Johnny Storm either becomes a lone hero or a supervillain out of revenge. Like, that would be the logical aspect and direction that you would go with that type of character because of his hothead nature. And it's like, oh, that would be an interesting story, but they would never do that because they're the first family. They always got to stick together. So Reed can't be the father figure, really. Especially for Franklin. He's a terrible dad to Franklin. I'm surprised he still remembers his name.
Franklin Richards is a whole other, I don't even.
Yeah, Franklin's a whole other thing. But like,
let's not even bring up
Grimm,
Franklin.
Ben Grimm is the reason people kind of read those comics, in my opinion. I think people loved Ben Grimm in The Thing because he was far more relatable. He
was kind of the most lovable character.
He had a big heart, and he was stuck. He was in love with a woman that he could never fully be with because of his deformity. And after Secret Wars, when Reed Richards figures out how Ben can actually go back to his human form and doesn't tell him because he thinks so little of Ben Grimm, well, actually, I'm like, that's a betrayal of Reed Richards. That's a betrayal of Ben Grimm. Because I don't think Reed would ever think Ben would be so superficial to think that if he turned human, Alicia wouldn't love him anymore. And that's what Reed Richards, that was a whole plot point in the 80s for Fantastic Four. And I'm like, that is, you screwed the pooch there, man. Because if Reed figured it out, the first thing he'd be like, this is it, Ben. You can turn it off and on. This is exactly how you do it. And that would be cool. So, but, it is what that's why it's so hard with trying to adapt Fantastic Four to live action, because the story conflicts are between those four characters and not so much the villain. The villain is doing something, and then the Fantastic Four gets involved, but there's really just kind of dealing with their own family problems.
Like Dr. Doom.
Well, even the Mole Man, like Mole Man kidnaps Sue Storm, and it's like, we got to go rescue her. Yet the Mole Man has kidnapped other people, and the Fantastic Four never got involved. It's like, well, you're really not superheroes. You're just people that happen to be very very wealthy and have a lot of technological know-how to solve problems, but you don't, because Reed likes to research, and Stu's just trying to keep this family together, and Ben is like watching his wrestling and his soap operas and eating candy and fighting over the remote with Johnny, who wants to see the monster truck derby or something. And they instead of getting two TVs, they have to fight over one, even though Reed Richards is a billionaire.
So at that point, I think it becomes a matter of like, how much of that are we attributing to maybe one or two writers doing something that feels out of character with what we know of a character leading up to that point, and then being given the reins of it, and how much of it are we attributing it to the character themselves?
See, that's a fair question. I don't know if it's one or two. I think it's probably more like closer to half a dozen, but it's over a very large spectrum.
That was a very broad way of putting it.
Yeah. Like
depending on the character we're talking about, for some it could be one or two writers. For some, it could be quite a few. Yeah.
I mean, I would say, especially in the 90s, and once you get into the Ultimates, they really just destroyed Reed Richards, personally. And then that just kind of builds onto what was kind of heading into that direction from the 70s.
Well, I think
finding the core of the characters and staying true to that, it comes down to, all right, well, what's the the genre for Fantastic Four can't be superhero. It has to be something more like Swiss Family Robinson in space, which would be Lost in Space, but not Lost in Space.
I was gonna say that's actually you beat me to it. Yeah, that's
yeah, because there's
very
a lot
similar.
of negative
Not a
zone
one-to-one,
stories,
but it's similar.
There's a lot of negative zone stories in Fantastic Four, which is really more exploration based. Like the supervillains that they go up against are weird. I still like the idea that Latveria, Doctor Doom's country, actually has 0 human populations. They're all androids or replicants at some point, and it's just a barren place. Nobody wants to live under Doom, so he just built his own citizens. At the same time, I think his other subplot is he's trying to unlock certain secrets beyond life to save his mother's soul, and that's kind of an endearing aspect too. But the expense at which Doom charges essentially affects other people on the planet, and that's when the Fantastic Four get involved to stop him. It's really, really complicated. Some of the stuff is convoluted, but I'm enjoying going back to these issues because some of the stories are actually really, really fun, inventive, and it's like, well, that's too thin of a story to really do in a feature film, but maybe a mini series or something. And
well, it's very interesting to see what Marvel did with certain characters that they didn't have the licensing rights to for several years running. Because you can look at the period of time where Fox had the licensing rights to Fantastic Four as well as X-Men, and you look at what they did with them in the comics. Yeah, they stopped making toys. They also, like, for the most part, with very few exceptions, a couple exceptions here and there, very few, like they shit all over them in the comic books. The comic books were either completely unreadable or forgettable or whatever. That was one of the entire reasons why there was that huge push for the Inhumans in the 2000s, or
which failed miserably.
Really. Yeah, which because Marvel, they didn't have the licensing rights to the X-Men when it came to the films, and so they tried making the Inhumans a far bigger thing, which the Inhumans on their own are entirely fine. There's some interesting characters there, but they were trying to basically replace the X-Men, their second biggest franchise behind Spider-Man, with the Inhumans. That's not going to work. There is no Earth 616, 1666 or otherwise where that's going to happen. It's just not going to. Well, it's really interesting to look at that, how it's like when they did not have the licensing rights to specific characters, how they just like did not give a crap about those characters.
Well, what they did they had an adverse effect of, like I always say about, people in our generation, we grew up with the Fantastic Four kind of being in the background, and they're not necessarily his main event superheroes. By making the X-Men what they've made them for a while and not really supporting the X-Men, like you have a generation of the kids, the ones that you want to like get into X-Men, they're not there for it. And this X-Men 97 cartoon and everything they're doing, it's to appeal to guys that are our age. Why do you think they're bringing back everything? I think they've made a mistake by basically their ego is what's going to be their downfall by doing these things like putting the X-Men in the back seat with no merchandise for a generation, or making the Fantastic Four B-list or whatever. You can't really sell these to kids coming up. So Marvel's basically got more mistake or more failures coming because, Andrew, I don't know if you know this, but Beast from the X-Men is in the Marvels.
That's like the big twist. And I saw a screen capture of it, and I was like,
you can't even imagine how bad it looks, man, because when you see it in motion, it's unnatural looking. It's like, I get it, he's a blue furry man, he's not there, but this is like next level bad.
As I understand, it looks like they basically took Kelsey Grammer's face and like AI stuck it on this.
They motion captured him.
Yeah, and it doesn't actually look like he looked in the prior X-Men films.
He's bigger in this version. Like he's kind of an actual beast size, but it's just awkward. Also, the costume that they put for Binary, the Maria Rambeau Binary, it is horrible looking. Like they didn't get the red that they use is more like a copper maroon, and I actually had to like ask my buddy to pause the screener because I'm like, it looks like she's just wearing a white one piece and that's her skin exposed because it matches her skin tone way too well. And it's like, no, it's a red thing. I'm like, they should have color corrected that because it looks like she's kind of wearing a white like slingshot costume, and it's not complimenting her figure at all.
I must be
It's
going crazy right now because I'm struggling to remember Maria Rambeau being binary.
this is in the alternate universe thing that happens.
Oh, it's the
Yeah.
Ultimate Universe.
Yeah,
That's why,
Monica
'cause I don't give a
Rambeau.
shit about Ultimate Universe.
Monica Rambeau closes a rift from the inside because reasons, and the inside of that rift is another universe of the MCU, and ones where the X-Men exist, and that's a whole nother thing, which also goes back to another complication with the X-Men, which is that the X-Men aren't really superheroes. They're just kind of fighting for acceptance within the greater society, and it's a divisive perspective between Charles Xavier's X-Men, mutants overall in general, and then the Brotherhood of Mutants.
That's not in. I wouldn't say that's entirely accurate. I think Xavier wants to have his team, the X-Men, fighting as heroes in order to like have greater humanity
Mhm.
view them as heroes and thereby
And
accept them.
useful.
Like they're
And
seeking
contributors, yeah.
acceptance. Yes, they're seeking acceptance. That's via integration and via being helpful to the greater humanity. But I wouldn't say that they're not superheroes. I wouldn't.
Well,
I
I'm
wouldn't
just
say
looking
that.
at how often do they fight against Doctor Doom or Galactus or any of the other, or Thanos? Like, I mean, in the Infinity Saga,
But not
they
every
were
hero needs
participants.
to. But not every hero needs to fight on the galactic level. My
Oh, I'm not
favorite
even saying
stories
on the
with
galactic level. I'm just
Spider-Man are
saying,
when he's just
do the
freaking
X-Men
Well, he
fight
friendly
means-
Stickman
neighborhood.
or the Vulture? Like, no, that
Yeah,
goes
he
to
means like
Spider-Man.
anything outside of their own interest. I'm with you, Script. Like they really just fight other mutants to preserve their rights, and they kill a
Yeah,
lot in the process too. I'm not one of these fans that's like,
Mhm.
oh, superheroes can't kill, but the X-Men kill a lot more than other superheroes do.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
I was.
just by
I'm just
way by
looking.
nature of what they're doing. That's who they come into contact with most often.
It is, but I look at it this way: where if Charles Xavier really wanted them to be part of a hero thing, something on level with the Avengers, we would see them fighting other characters that are not mutant adversaries or not mutants themselves. Like, because really, it is X-Men is basically mutants versus mutants mostly, and also a little bit of humans, like Friends of Humanity, and some of the politics within the core of the MCU, or sorry, core of the Marvel comics that want to register and lock up mutants and all that type of stuff. That's there, but I mean, how often do the X-Men fight the Serpent Society? Like, probably never. Maybe I could be wrong, but I don't recall it. Where are they outside of that? Do we ever see? We see Wolverine whenever he's with Weapon X or with Alpha Flight. Probably they're doing stuff to help, terrorists attacking, parts of Canada or parts of the world or what have you. There's something else there where there's missions or spy stuff that works out well. But overall, X-Men, one of the things that's a caveat to X-Men, which I think kind of restricts them a little bit, is the fact that if they are going into battle, it's really they're fighting for mutant rights against either other mutants or a government wing that's trying to abuse mutants for the sake of their own political gain.
Okay, but to play devil's advocate, who else is
Sure.
going to give a shit about that?
That's fair. I mean,
Is Spider-Man going to be fighting against evil mutants?
I think if you got Spider-Man fighting against Sentinels, people would show up for that.
Sure, people.
Oh, I'd
okay,
watch
but it's
that.
Spider-Man. People are going to show
Yeah.
up regardless. People showed up for the 3 MCU Spider-Man films.
But
We know that
if I saw Storm fighting toe to toe with the Green Goblin, I think that'd be cool.
She would whoop his ass in 5 seconds.
I don't think that's much of a
Probably.
fight, to be honest. Like, I'm not interested in that because, well, one, I love Storm, so give me more Storm, and I'm happy. But give me Storm that makes sense. Like, that's good. Gabi has no chance against Storm. I'm sorry. Like that's kind of a waste of her. And
Okay, Storm versus the Sinister Six, so now it's 6-on-1, so different skill sets.
Yeah,
but
Storm against the
regardless,
Sinister Six, fine. Like she's gonna have something going there, but still,
Oh, she
my
could turn
point
the
is-
Sandman into glass. That'd look cool.
that would be so cool.
that would be pretty freaking gangster. That would be pretty gangster. I'd be here for that. But my point is that there's a reason why the mutants, Xavier's mutants, primarily fight anti-humanity mutants and all these other bad guys that they're more in their wheelhouse. And
Yeah.
maybe that can be through a different lens looked at as self-interest serving, but and maybe to a degree that is, but the point is nobody else gives a crap. You look at there's a reason why the X-Men and the Avengers have come into conflict, because the Avengers largely haven't given a shit about the mutants.
Right.
Nobody gives a shit about the mutants. That's why when Tony Stark tried to recruit the mutants in the first Marvel Civil War, Emma Frost told him to go fuck himself, because he was coming up there talking about registrations. You want to come up in
Like,
my
we've been
house talking
fighting
about
that for decades. Yeah.
registrations? Like, what do you think? Who do you think you are coming into my house talking about registrations right now? Do me a favor, fuck off. Like, I'm not. We're not gonna. We want no part of this conflict. We're not gonna join him, but you can definitely piss off, right? We just want to do our thing here, and that's just a fact. Nobody
Yeah.
else is standing up for the rest of the mutants, so they're going to have to stand up for themselves. What are they going to do? Just take it lying down,
I mean,
or
no,
wait
you're not
around for
wrong there.
Spidey to show up and beat down Magneto? No.
Well, on film, it's going to be hard to really. I'm with the script on the whole. Like, what are they going to do on film? Because if you're trying to build the greater MCU narrative, you're going to have to build them into it. So you're going to have to come up with a threat that's going to compel them to actually,
Well, that's why it was
get
a
involved.
waste for them to do Civil War as early as they did, because
Well,
Civil War
I would say that's
largely
fair.
happens the way that it did because of the mutants.
Yes.
It was a
and
bunch
that's the
of
other
like
part too.
C and D level mutants that caused the inciting incident that caused Tony Stark to have a freaking bleeding heart and to all of a sudden go along with this Superhuman Registration Act.
Oh, absolutely. And that also that's probably why I think it resonates so well, because it's one of the rare instances where X-Men stories were not isolated only to X-Men stories. And that's
Mhm.
that's one of the risks that you have when you're transferring something like the X-Men into live action and into integrated to the MCU is X-Men movies are very isolated to X-Men things. You can kind of have other characters, pop in as cameos into X-Men, but getting the other way around, it seems a little bit difficult because the driving force for all the characters of the X-Men is mutants, mutant issues, because that's their life. Their whole life is basically we have to hide, we have to try and integrate, we have to try to prove ourselves that we're not really a threat, even though they objectively know their powers make them a threat.
Mhm.
That I mean, it's all logical stuff, but trying to reconcile that so that you can actually have your X-Men do your X-Men stuff, but also say, hey, maybe we want to get Wolverine on this covert mission with Shield so that we can actually stop this bad guy somewhere that's, maybe either trying to take over a town, maybe kind of WandaVision-esque, or you have some sort of issue where you have a civil war in Wakanda and it's like, well, we have to help T'Challa regain his throne. Because another country has come in and invaded and somehow has usurped them. So T'Challa reaches out to the Avengers, and now we got Wolverine, Captain America, T'Challa working together, all three, to stop some sort of villain. Maybe it's MODOK. Who cares? But at least you're getting other characters from other avenues of the MCU together, because X-Men does feel very isolated. I know a lot of X-Men fans that have never read any other Marvel books.
Well, maybe this is devil's advocate. Maybe that's completely okay.
Could be.
Maybe it really doesn't matter. Maybe it's perfectly fine for people to just enjoy the X-Men in isolation of the rest of the Marvel universe, because that's part of comic book fandom. At least it was for me, because I know for me, especially in Marvel, and I've had this conversation with the Saskas, who, as I said earlier, they're practically encyclopedic in terms of their Marvel knowledge, incredibly brilliant and well read with that. I have a high level of knowledge with a few subsects of Marvel: Spider-Man, X-Men, Carol Danvers up to a certain point. I see ladies in the chat. Thank you. Love you too. And then like outside of that, I have like general knowledge of like big events, other things that have happened, very seminal runs on things. But like outside of that, like whatever, like I had my focus, right? And that it's that way for a lot of comic book readers. Whereas like, okay, maybe I'm just a big Fantastic Four fan, so I'm really only reading Fantastic Four, and maybe I'll pick up, I don't know, Spider-Man comic here or there or whatever. But you have those people, and that's perfectly fine. So I see no reason. And this is actually an issue with what the MCU did to comic book films. It was super cool for that first 3 phases to have this very well thought out build up to this decent payoff. Endgame loses its luster on repeat viewings, but let's just, for sake of argument, from Iron Man 1 to Endgame, they did a good job building out their cinematic universe across all these different sub franchises, right? And all these different characters, making them work fairly cohesively into a decent payoff, and we had a good time. I don't need that forever. I don't need all of these characters to know each other on a first name basis. I don't need them all to be interacting 24/7. I'd be perfectly fine, honestly, if they came out with just a good X-Men film and it had piss all to do with the rest of the MCU. Maybe they hint or suggest at that it takes place within the greater MCU, but outside of that, just give me a good X-Men film. That's all I need, because I haven't had a good X-Men film since Days of Future Past, which is only a good X-Men film because it's a good film, because I have to forget that I read Days of Future Past while I'm watching it.
Well, look, with this movie that's out now, it's too late for that because everything has to be tied together, and I'm guessing the X-Men are gonna try to like help get this chick back and break space time and get sucked over to the mainline MCU and all this other horse shit.
Deadpool 3 will resolve it.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So Marvel has one movie coming out next year, and it's a big like dead zone until 2025. So all they have coming out next year is Deadpool 3. This movie, The Marvels, is a flop. Ant-Man 3 was not a hit. It was a flop too. Guardians made less. I think it made less than the second one, but it's still a hit.
Yep.
So Guardians is, the outlier here. Do you think this time away is going to help Marvel? Do you think it's going to make people miss this? Or do you think it's just going to kind of further their demise of like, they need to be around in the public conscious in this huge gap? Because remember, Deadpool's going to be rated R. So that's going to take it'll take kids out. But then again, were kids even Deadpool fans in the first place? So I guess my question is,
teenagers. Yeah.
I didn't even get into Deadpool until the first movie came out. I thought he was kind of an insufferable character, and I hated like running into Deadpool like cosplayers that would like try to act as him, and I'm like, fuck this character. I cannot tolerate it.
I'm gonna say this, and I love the Saskas. I chat with them almost on a daily basis. They're some of my favorite human beings on the planet. I am admittedly not a Deadpool fan. He just wasn't my taste. He wasn't my speed. That was fine. Like I had friends who were fans of him. Like actual fans. Like they were reading his comic books from the beginning, and that was totally cool. He wasn't my speed. Like in terms of Marvel, just give me Spidey, give me X-Men. I'm good. I'm happy. I, even as somebody who is a Deadpool normie, seeing all of a sudden after that first film came out, everybody and their brother's goldfish acting like they've been lifelong fans of Deadpool was the most annoying shit imaginable. I was like, you are acting as insufferable as he is in the movie. Stop it.
Dude, the thing that always annoyed me is when you would meet people that are Deadpool fans but not comic fans, and they would try to it's like you're like trying to talk about something. Let's say you're at the comic book shop, and I don't know, Dark Phoenix Saga pops up, and you start talking about the Dark Phoenix Saga, and some random asshole just goes, "Yeah, but then Deadpool." It's like Deadpool wasn't around in 1980. Yeah, but anyway, then they just want to keep talking about Deadpool because it's their only frame of reference. And I'm a firm believer of like, yeah, everybody should get into comics and do their stuff, but it's like, that was what turned me off too. It's like there's more to life than Deadpool. Thankfully, that movie kicked ass because I would have been like, if that movie sucked, I would have been one of those like anti-Deadpool people because I don't know. I can't do the comics.
This is the thing. I've had chats with the Saskas about Deadpool, and they're far more knowledgeable on the character than I could ever hope to be, or truthfully care to be, just because the character's not my speed, as I said before. I saw that first film in theaters with my dad. And if I see a film in theaters with my dad, it tends to paint the experience. I had a good time in the theater. But like I said, I'm a Deadpool normie. I know minimal about the character, and I ultimately don't care that much about the character, though the Saskas did recommend a specific run to me in the chat, and if they recommend it, I will read it. So
Which
we'll
one is
see if
it?
my opinion by Daniel Way, they said. So read Daniel Way's run on the character. So okay, if they recommend it, I will at the very least give it a shot, because I know they know what they're talking about when it comes to Deadpool, because they're definitely fans. So I will check that out, Jen and Sylvia. I appreciate the recommendation. But I had fun with. I've heard things since, thanks to the Saskas, about that film. But just in isolation, I had fun in theaters with my dad. There were some laughs, and I treasure the time that I get to spend with my dad. And we used to have a thing where we'd go to the theaters. First, we'd grab In-N-Out Burger that was right next to the theater, right next to the IMAX. Then we'd go right there. You know, we grab burgers and shakes and fries. Then we'd go to the theater, see a movie, and have a good time. You know, and that was kind of our ritual. So I had a good time with that. I did not like the second film at all.
Same.
That movie is completely insufferable. Like, Deadpool's already an insufferable character for me, and then I saw that movie and I just did not like the movie. Period. Like the first movie, like I had a good time because I saw it with my dad. But it's frustrating when we end up getting people who are like, "Oh, we saw this movie and now we're lifelong fans of this character." But are you? Like, do you actually know this character? I don't think you do.
No,
I
I
just
first kind of got my taste of him in, I think, a cartoon show, one of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon shows. That was my first taste of Deadpool.
Was he
Voiced
in
by,
that?
was voiced by Will Friedle, who did Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond. He's from
Yeah.
Different Worlds.
Eric
It was
Matthews, all
actually
right.
it was actually kind of clever, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of a clever, eccentric little character. He's got a little She-Hulkish aspects to him, breaking the fourth wall. And then one of my good friends, I brought it up to him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, when I was in college, he says that his roommate had every issue of Deadpool. This was like back in like 2004." And I'm like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, diehard fan." And I said, "Is this any authentically to him?" He's like, "I don't know. I never read the books. I just know of the character and the crazy origin." And then later we heard the movie was hitting theaters. We all went and saw it. I met his old roommate, and yeah, he loved it. I enjoyed the movie a lot. I was like, okay, this is a cool gimmick of a character. But like you, Andrew, I was not impressed with the sequel. I thought the fat kid they got was intolerable.
I was
I thought it was a woman for a bit
physically
too.
angry in almost
Same.
every
Looks like
scene
Rebel
that he
Wilson.
was in. And I don't necessarily want to blame the kid, because at the end of the day, he was just a kid. But the way that character was written was so obscenely bad that I was like, I was trying to enjoy myself while watching this movie. Like, I was like, okay, I had a really great time seeing the first one with my dad in theaters. I saw the second one in theaters with my ex, and I was like, I am trying so hard to like this movie, but this kid is making it impossible. And the rest of the movie wasn't doing much of a better job, honestly.
No, it was not.
But I was like, that kid's. I'm not in the film industry, and it's been a little while since I was doing acting school, and things like that. And so my ability to differentiate between what is likely directorial and what is just performative, is probably a little skewed. And so it's hard for me to decide, okay, is it because the kid's just a really shit actor and has no personality and is completely insufferable and unlikable? Or is it a matter that the kid's probably fine, but the directorial direction for him was horrendous? And I couldn't make up my mind. And at the end of the day, when I walked out of the theater, I didn't care anymore because I just didn't like the movie. It was not a
I
fun
don't
time
ever
for
go
me.
back to watch it. I don't even think
I have
about
never
Deadpool very
rewatched that
often.
second film. Yeah.
I don't think I have either. It's not that funny.
It wasn't. What pissed me off was because they had some of the members of X-Force in there, right? And they just like killed them off and turned them into jokes. And I'm like, okay, so like you're gonna add characters that I do actually have some familiarity with, and you're just gonna kill them off for shock value, make them a joke, or make them annoying. Like,
Well,
Really?
none of that bothered me as much as like I just didn't think the story had a purpose as much as the first one did, because I
Yeah.
really liked the theme of, he wanted to save himself from the cancer and the whole relationship between him and Vanessa, and how
Mhm.
he couldn't go back to her because of his face, but she loved him anyway. And I thought that was like a very
It felt like a
good
sequel that was
story.
made because the first movie made a crap ton of money,
It was. That's all it is.
rather than a thought out story.
I mean, how many sequels do we live through today that are like that?
Okay, fair.
Most.
I mean, that's par for the
fine.
course.
I'll give you that. that's most of them. However, what's not one of them is going to be the sequel to George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, Festival of the Living Dead, by Jen and Sylvia Soska, coming out sometime early next year. Hopefully.
Ooh.
Mhm.
That was a great. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that one. That was a phenomenal plug. I don't give myself props very often, but I'm giving myself props for that one. So, yeah.
Well, somebody's got to get props on this show, because we're talking about the Marvels, and that movie deserves very little props
It
at all.
deserves zero props. So somebody's got to get props tonight, and may as well be the
I'd say
Sasha.
the costume department did well in the Marvels.
I
Brie
agree.
Larson's costume looks way better, and the two that she wore look way better than the previous one. I've seen. What's funny is I saw stills of the Monica Rambeau costume prior to them doing shoots, so the costume tests, and this was before the actor got pregnant, because she got pregnant during production and then was pregnant a few months pregnant during reshoots, and you can tell.
Did she
You
do
can-
any stunts? Well,
All the stunts that she did, they were shot early. They should shot them first, so that when they cut to all the stunts, you're like, oh, okay, that's.
I only asked because one of my big respect bits for Gal Gadot is like she did a lot of her stunts in the first Wonder Woman film. While
You're not going to feel any of that respect for this movie, because the stunts, even in this movie, no matter what she did,
I
didn't
know
do a lot. A lot of
They're
it's
not
just like
huge.
being
Yeah.
pulled by wires. There's no like. This is one of those
No,
movies that feels so much of like a blue screen movie or a green screen movie, where you're like, at least Wonder Woman was shot, outdoors at times. They built sets, they did things. It's like they're in front of a green screen, they're in outer space, they built the interior of a spaceship
Right.
and looked off out of a window. It's an anemic movie in terms of action, and the final battle is not epic. Like,
what
where's
even
the
is
Dora
the
Army
final
like at all?
battle? What is it? Just the three of them against
It's
what's
3
her
on
face?
1, and she's supposed to have this massive army at her command, and they're nowhere to be found.
Yeah, they ran out of money for this movie. Like, I know it's expensive, but this looks like
How
a
did
cheap
hold
movie.
on? Wait, everything stops. How the hell did they run out of movie? They already spent $300 million on the bitch.
They had to cut it down to make it as coherent as they possibly could, because apparently it wasn't, and a lot of it wasn't working. And what they ended up having is 94 minutes, not including credits, of a film, and that was probably a third of what they actually were trying to tell as a story, which goes to show how terrible their story economy was, because in 90 minutes they couldn't tell a complete story. It felt like a third, when comparatively you go to any other film. Heck, you can even go to RoboCop, which is like 5 minutes, and that is a really dense film.
In what reality? Okay, let's entertain the multiverse. You let me know which Earth is $300 million not enough to make a decent movie.
Well, I mean, I
Jen,
think it was
Sylvia,
perfectly
please
enough.
help me out here. How many phenomenal movies could you ladies make with $300 million as your budget, not counting marketing?
They should make
10?
10 movies.
10.
They could probably make twice that.
But you shouldn't,
Good.
though. Because you
So
don't want to.
make 10 really well.
We don't want to
put together movies.
oversaturate. Sure, you want to spend wisely. The question's partially rhetorical, okay? But the fact is that's absurd.
Well,
I just
fact
like the
is
script, and I
absurd.
came to the exact
They cut
amount.
Because what was it? They had an original test audience. They said their last film was only 5 million. I say only 5. I wish I had a bank account that had 5 million. That'd be great. But what I understand is their initial test screening at whatever that first cut of the film was received so poorly by the test audience that they were like, okay, we have to cut this down. And they had to cut it down further.
They actually reshot
That's-
first before they cut down.
They reshot. So they spent more money that was not in the initial budget in order to do reshoots.
Well,
So
reshoots
then-
are usually accounted for in the initial budget. Whether it's spent or not is depending if they need them or not. But ideally, what it was is they shot the movie. It tested poorly. They went back for reshoots, which is when the Monica Rambeau actress was pregnant. So they had to do, so the reshoots were very limited. And
Right.
the test did worse than the previous one. And then the actors went on strike. So they couldn't do any more reshoots. So the only thing that they could do now is spend a buttload of money with editors and digital effects artists to try and cobble together a somewhat coherent film for a release date that Disney decided we're not going to push back. That's what they did.
That release date is like a quote unquote good release date because originally they were going to have to go up against Dune. Could you imagine if they went up against Dune with this movie?
Oh,
This thing would have made,
this
like,
movie's
$30
already
million.
doing poorly.
The
They
PR
would
would
have
have
done even
been
worse.
the Marvels can't compete with Dune. That would have been the PR, and that would have been the excuse to try and obfuscate failure. Now it went up against nothing, and it still bombed. So they have nothing.
But it's the angry guys on the internet and the trolls that destroyed the film.
Right,
script.
it's
Don't
us.
you know that?
The fact is,
Sure.
there's more of us, not me. Because you need people of intelligence on this sort of quest thing. Some people will understand that reference. But there's probably more of us that went to see the movie than the people that they were professing to market the film to. And we know this because we can look and see the numbers. Like, the movie is performing just abysmally by way of just being a bad film. Like, they cut that. The thing was already bad to the point where they had to cut it down to be as minimalistic as possible so that it was as digestible as possible so they could just skate over that thin ice quickly and then move on. But here's the thing. What are they moving on to? We've got
That's a good question.
We've got Echo,
No one will watch
Agatha?
it because
Agatha that has had like 3 different titles to it.
that's the biggest mistake ever, dude, because they're only putting that show out there because that stupid song got a bunch of downloads during the pandemic and people bought t-shirts and random shit. And it's like Disney took the worst metrics. Then they went, oh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put money into this because it's going to make even
That's
more.
a horrible idea. Look, I'll be the
Stop
first to
making
admit,
shows for cat ladies. Like, come
I'll-
on now. Cats are cool and all, but like these shows, like, seriously, let's just be honest for a minute, man. They're making it for the worst demographic possible. That's like trying to sell
one that doesn't pay money. Yeah, that's a bad demographic.
Also, too, they don't like that shit. They like whatever's in the popular zeitgeist. And those things were popular because it was the beginning of the pandemic. It was the first Disney Plus Marvel show, and it was a thing. But by the time She-Hulk rolled around, like, they didn't get in. Women didn't watch She-Hulk. Nobody watched She-Hulk. All you
Nobody
got were people
watched
talking
What
shit
If.
about it.
Very few people watched Falcon and Winter Soldier comparative to WandaVision. And
I don't think
I'll be the
Loki
first
did
to
that
admit,
hot because nobody's talking about a third season. They're just like, we'll do something
Nobody
else
wants
instead.
to
So
talk about a third season because
There's
honestly,
no way they could do a third season.
that-
They're claiming the plan was to always put Loki in this position where
right.
instead of the timeline, the sacred timeline being a loop, it's now a tree. So it has branches and roots, and
Of
Loki's in the
course.
middle holding it together.
Oh,
Well, a variant of Loki, because again, Tom Hiddleston can always be another Loki in another universe to whatever.
I
but
never
regardless.
thought I'd see a situation where Tom Hiddleston looked like he was either phoning it in or couldn't act. But Loki season 1 proved me wrong because that show was so bad. There was nothing redeeming about it. The best moments were honestly with Owen Wilson, but that couldn't even be saved because the writing was just so boring. It was so drab, so soulless. And I'll be the first to admit I enjoyed the first couple of episodes of WandaVision because I grew up watching like the Dick Van Dyke Show, I Love Lucy, and stuff like that with my mom and dad as a kid. But once they moved beyond that in the show, it was just kind of And I'll also admit that the actress that played Agatha, or at least the character that was
Catherine
revealed
Hahn.
to be Agatha,
Mhm.
like she played a very charming, very charismatic character. But for anybody that's read the comics, that's not Agatha. The character that was written was not Agatha. The character that was written was a very charming and charismatic character, but it's not Agatha. And also, that character just isn't. I don't know how you justify giving a character like that her own series. I don't care if it's only 4 episodes. Like, you are spending money that is not going to be made back if you're doing that. The Disney, I'm someone who comes from a business education. I went to school for business management and finance. And I look at what Disney has been doing for the last several years with regards to the MCU and with Star Wars. And I'm just, I can't quantify how they have people that are signing off on this stuff continually over and over that is not only not providing a return on investment, it's actually resulting in a net loss. In business, you know what happens if you continually result in a net loss for your employer?
You should get fired.
You don't have that employer anymore because your ass gets fired. And what Disney's been doing is just, it's beyond the pale. It's absolutely absurd.
How much of that comes from being able to rely on theme parks and other forms of revenue so you can make these things and not worry about the cost?
That's a good point. That's a very good point, because for a while, I mean, obviously in the first 3 phases, they were crapping out billion-dollar films like it was nothing, right? But then you move into phase 4 and 5, and okay, now it's more of we're subsidizing the losses, and we're subsidizing these projects with, you know, all the exorbitant money that we make off of our parks. Well, that's fine, though it's not. Like, if you look at a balance sheet, that's actually not fine. You don't want to be doing that. Not if you're a good business person, leastways. But now they're at a point where they're also seeing a dip in park attendance. They're seeing big losses. What was it? What was it called? Galaxy's Edge is what it was. Was just that massive loss.
You mean the Galactic Star Cruiser?
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, Galactic Star.
Hey guys, let's open up a theme park based on the biggest property of all time and let it close in just over a year because no one could afford to go. That's the Disney way of things.
That's crazy to me. That speaks to just horrendous business management. I don't know who was signing off on that.
We know who signed off on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
someone who shouldn't have had any authority over that too.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. But they can't keep that up forever. I'm really curious. I'm more than anything interested to look, I don't know, let's say 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line. I don't want to think about being freaking 40 years old right now. And being like, where is Disney at now? Because look at their slate. What do they have for Star Wars that anybody gives a crap about? That you can imagine them making a ton of money on? Nothing. What do they have in Marvel that you can quantify and imagine them making a crap ton of money on? We're talking like phases 1 through 3, levels of revenue. Nothing.
I'd say if they spend the money to do an Avengers movie that has like Tobey Maguire and Hugh Jackman and Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth and Scarlett Johansson, like literally everybody, then people will come out to see that movie.
That would be the biggest admission of failure imaginable, because that to me would reek of desperation. That to me would say all of this other stuff, these other characters, these other stories that we've tried to push. And I see Jen and Sylvie in the chat. Sylvie is a massive. Well, they're both big Tobey Maguire fans, but Sylvie especially.
They liked Seabiscuit? Really?
See, I mean,
not his finest work, but you know.
Seabiscuit was Pleasantville. He was in that too.
That's a good movie.
Him and Reese Witherspoon had good chemistry for siblings.
They did. But regardless, like that to me would say we failed with all of these other things that we were trying to shove down your throat for several years running straight. And so we're having to fall back on these things that we know were at one point really good and you really enjoyed. And we are hoping and praying that you give us your money for them. Like, I'll be the first to admit, like, a Sam Raimi directed Spider-Man 4 with Tobey Maguire to like bring everything full circle for that version of the character, I'd at least be interested. I'd be like, okay, well, tell me about the story. Like, what are you doing with them? Like, because I'm not a fan of Kirsten Dunst as MJ. That's not MJ. But like, what are you gonna do with the story? Because I do like Tobey Maguire. He's not my favorite Spider-Man, but I can watch those first 2 films on repeat probably all day long. Like, if there was a function on my TV to just have it completely run through both of them over and over, I would do it. Or give me Amazing Spider. Honestly, actually, I see you, Jen and Sylvia. I would rather Sony get wise, and by wise I mean like let Mark Webb just kind of do his thing and stay the hell out of his business. Don't be trying to push stuff into the films that he didn't want to do, just like you did with Sam Raimi and Spider-Man 3. Did he what?
Did he have that strong of an artistic voice though? Because it just felt like he was a hired gun to get Avi Arad's message on screen.
He understood the character of Peter, and he understood how things should look visually very strongly. But Avi Arad,
that damn costume, that first Amazing Spider-Man costume is god awful. Oh.
I appreciate that costume for very specific reasons, but Avi Arad was like, "Hey, we want to do a Sinister Six film. We want to set up Sinister Six, so we need you to set up the Sinister Six in this film." Mark Webb's like, "But I already have a plan for this film." Just like Sam Raimi was just trying to do Sandman, and they were like, "Hey, we need you to do Venom." So, I'm not trying to do Venom right now. Okay, but we need you to do Venom, so you're going to do Venom. And that kind of interference is really freaking obnoxious. So I would rather Sony get wise and then just do. Actually, you know what? I'm going to backtrack. To hell with the MCU in general. How about Sony just give us Sam Raimi Spider-Man 4 and Mark Webb and Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man 3, neither of which are attached to the MCU at all, and just make them both good Spider-Man films that like wrap up the story of those 2 characters. That to me, I would take over anything else. I don't need any of the other stuff. That's fine. I'm only here for Spider-Man anyway.
Yeah, see, he's my favorite superhero, but I don't really like the idea of just going back to 20-year-old movies and adding another film after we've moved on 2 and 3 times. Like, it's like with Indiana Jones. We didn't need to see him again. We didn't really need. The only reason Ghostbusters exists now is to fix a property that you ruined. We talk about woke or whatever at the beginning. That movie, Ghostbusters 2016, is the most damaging movie for a brand, to the point where they had to bring back all the actors they could and do everything they could to make you forget about it. And now it's like it doesn't even exist. It goes Ghostbusters 2, Afterlife, and Frozen Empire. Where's the 2016 one? Who cares? It never mattered. But I'm okay with just like taking Spider-Man into the future, because the last one ended on a good note. Honestly, the last thing I'd want them to do is be like, "Oh, we're done with this now." It's like, what the fuck? I hate movie franchises because they keep restarting everything, and I think that's.
I don't know if Holland is going to be doing.
I don't need him to come back. Just no more reboots, no more origin stories, none of this shit. Just get a different guy to pick up where it left off, like the James Bond method.
James Bond,
and that's fair. That's entirely fair, and I totally get that perspective.
Because we gotta stop, but we gotta break this conditioning of every time a new actor plays a role, it's a reboot, a new universe, all this fucking stupid stuff that the people on the internet, like when you go to the internet to look for like ideas, or when you go to the internet and try to operate on their level, you realize that those people can't make movies. Those people can't write stories. Those people can't do this shit. They can't even comprehend. Like, I don't know how many times I've been on a Facebook group and it's like, how did Michael Myers have a second knife? That's a continuity error. It's like, watch the fucking movie. They explain it. Or how does this happen? It's in the movie. Pay attention. We got to break and stop worrying about the lowest common denominator, because everyone's going to go see what the big popular thing is. But we got to get people back into understanding actors can play different, characters can be played by different actors. We can continue a story for more than 3 to 5 years because of a contract dispute. We got to stop putting the cart before the horse with a property and a franchise, because it's like with the Amazing Spider-Man. There could have been something interesting, but that second one was, we got to get Sinister Six and tie everything to Oscorp. We got to make Harry sick. We got to, it's like, tell me the goddamn story and finish the one that you started. Like, even if I didn't like those movies, I at least wanted the story to come to a natural conclusion. Same thing with Spider-Man 3. Don't give me garbage with Venom. Don't give me Topher Grace. Don't give me all this other shit. Give me the continuation of Peter and Harry and what happened with Mary Jane. Like, none of that stuff. That's my big complaint with modern movie making. You know, beyond the politics, beyond the expensive budget. I don't give a shit how much a movie costs. I don't care how much a movie makes. I only talk about it because I hear it on YouTube. And if a movie costs $500 million to make, that ticket still costs me like $12. If a movie's an independent feature that costs, $1 million, it still costs me $12 to go see it in theaters. So the things I care about are like advancing a story to a natural point where it can kind of continue, because it's so frustrating to constantly be stuck in a loop of Arrested Development every couple of years. Let's reboot it. Let's do it again. It's like, there are more than 5 stories. Please stop telling us the same 5 stories, because that's why people go to video games. But now we're getting into the same problem with video games too. It's like, well, we're doing Modern Warfare again. We're doing Vice City again. We're doing San Andreas again. It's like, are you fucking serious that we need to redo games every Resident Evil? I love Resident Evil. The first couple are great, but now we got to remake them all, and then we got to redo those remakes. And it's just like a constant cycle of the same shit.
Throughout all of October, I was replaying the remakes of 2, 3, and 4.
I'm standing by the original version of 4. It's better than the remake. I know the remake's got better graphics and it's more atmospheric.
Even without the graphics, I actually like this is actually hard for me to say, because up until this, the original Resident Evil 4 was my favorite of the franchise. But I like the remake just a hair more, because to me, it's a slightly tighter story. It feels it's like that cut of really phenomenal steak that just has maybe a little excess fat on it. Like, not even a lot. Like, there's just a little teeny bit that doesn't add to the flavor. It's just like, all right, there's just a little bit that's unnecessary there. Just like slice that off. And then all of a sudden it's maybe not perfect, but about as good as it's going to get for me. And I totally understand your position on preferring the original. I adore the original Resident Evil 4. That was one of my favorite games of all time. But I truly enjoyed and appreciated the remake, because I did appreciate the tightening up of the story. There were a couple of things that some people were bitching about there not being in the game. And I'm like, yeah, but did that actually add anything to the story specifically? For me, it didn't. For some people, it obviously did. But for me, I was like, I really appreciate this. And they did a phenomenal job, because I've been playing the they added the Separate Ways DLC, so Ada's story, whatever it is, 7 or 8 chapters. I think it's 7 chapters of where you play as Ada Wong. And I'm on the final chapter now, and they did a really great job with it. Like, really great job. I'm very pleased with it.
Now, Script, has there ever been a decade, and Andrew, I want you to answer too, but has there ever been a decade that has less of an identity than the last 2? Because everything's the same. I mean, Assassin's Creed.
No. 90s was kind of the decade where they were transitioning away from the 80s, but we didn't know what they were transitioning into, and we found out.
I felt like they were kind of transitioning into kind of an anything goes. Like, everything was to the max. Action was to the max. Sexy was to the max. Yeah. It was just like, all right, let's take
more than the Vanilla Ice album.
Yeah, crank everything up to 11, I think, is what the 90s amounts to. And that's both for better and for worse. Some of my favorite comic books are from the 90s. Some of the absolute
None of my favorite
worst
comic books are from the 90s.
Some of the absolute worst comic books also come from the 90s. So,
dude, like, anytime I see people trying to emulate 90s comic books, I just go like, why? Because I guess I take the scholarly approach to these things, because I write them and draw them myself. But like, there are great artists out there, and there are people that are really good at drawing but can't tell a story with their artwork to save their lives. Even some people that I praise, I read their books and I go, what the fuck am I looking at? Like, there are a lot of times where even Jim Lee stuff, I go, there's a lot going on this page, man. Like, this is, it needs color to make you. Hell, even some of the line work is too thin, and I can't even tell what I'm looking at. And the color is needed to, like, help differentiate the things. That decade is like the absolute worst for that art form. And we're still paying for the damages, because you get a a group of greedy publishers who found a couple things that work, and you still got these goddamn variant covers and all these number ones and this and that and all these things that they pulled back then.
The
And
90s really shit the bed when it came to the variant covers. That's why the industry freaking burst, was because of that.
one of the reasons, though, because
the quality for a lot of the books wasn't there. You had your gems, but then the quality for a lot of the other books was just like flash over substance, 8 million variant covers, and really crazy, like unnecessarily complicated variant covers too.
Well,
with some of the stuff they were doing.
Well, there's always more than just the story reasons, though, because the companies weren't doing the right things. They were investing in Fleer. They were investing in other things to try to make money. They weren't investing in their own books. They were trying to do other things, and none of it really worked. I mean, even Marvel tried to get into their own distribution. What was it, like Heroes World or something like that? And so they made all of these mistakes that led to this bubble, on top of speculating the value of these really shitty books. Like, I can't believe the old Rob Liefeld books hold value outside of nostalgia. I mean, there are great books out there that are worth a quarter, and then there are these crappy books that go for like $90. What's the first appearance of this and that? And those damn characters really don't even resonate. I'm waiting for another, like, the art form will always exist, especially online, but whatever the mainstream version is on its way out. Like, I know we say it's dead. I don't say it's dead, but I say we're almost there. And this is the time I don't think it'll ever recover, because with the other art forms of video games, movie making, animation, and all this, you're going to have to tell something special in a comic book. And you can't really use these mainline iconic characters anymore outside of just marketing toys and video games and other shit. Like, I don't think the X-Men are ever going to sell 1 million copies again, or 4 million copies, or 8 million, or whatever Jim Lee sold. And I don't think Spider-Man's ever going to see another 1 million copy. Wasn't the Star Wars #1 the last comic book to sell 1 million copies from 2015?
Probably.
Because it had like 80 variant covers.
Which is such a waste. I mean, it really is. Like, why do you need that many? I mean, I don't know. Like 5 or less is kind of the sweet spot, really. And only if you, I mean, the other part too is you have the variant covers in the big two. Some of the times you had the variant covers where if you got all the variant covers and you stacked them like top to bottom, they created a bigger plateau, or bigger, sorry, not plateau. They created a bigger kind of image or a bigger scene of what's going on. Which was cool, but you don't get that level of ingenuity anymore.
I guess I'm frustrated as a consumer.
No, that's fair.
I keep going backwards, man. Like, I'm watching shows from the 70s and the 50s. I always listen to old music, but I don't dislike new stuff. It's just the new stuff is the old stuff done worse. Like, why is Magnum PI back? Why did they remake Hawaii 5-0?
Why did we remake with MacGyver? Yeah, I know.
Yeah. What is the reason? The old one was glorious. It had a mullet. You can't do any better than that.
Well,
so
I can tell you the reason is that the television, I think Warner Brothers actually owns the rights to those because they have contracts with CBS, but I might be wrong. There might be another studio that owns them, because Warner Brothers makes the vast majority of television. So they own a lot of rights. And when you have a bunch of ITP like that and it's not making any money, you kind of want to get it in gear to make money again. So you do revivals or sequel series or something of that nature. And that's kind of what happened. Like Hawaii 5-0, I think it's funny how that one show, which 5-0 was just about the state of Hawaii. It had nothing to do with the police. Like that, and yet the 5-0 is now synonymous with referring to the cops in the United States. But the thing is, that was the Hawaii 5-0 was the first revival. I had, I think, James Caan's son, right? Coming into it. And that hit really well because it was a recognizable IP and it fit the comfort zone of the procedural. And the procedurals, I think the procedurals took over the 90s. So that would be the identity to go back earlier. The procedural television shows. You had all the NCIS, you had the JAG, you had the Nash Bridges, you had the CSIs, which is a byproduct, which actually was a byproduct mostly of Miami Vice. You have all those procedurals that they were easy to film. You had the General Hospital, ER, all that stuff kind of just took over television, and completely shaped the 90s into basically the comfort generation, where it's all about the comfort. It's not, and it's comfort with a pseudo edge. Because what was really edgy about any of the shows we saw on the procedural side of things on your primetime television blocks from Monday to Friday? I can't really think of anything like that.
What,
I mean,
in the 90s?
In the late 90s and the early 2000s, it wasn't until we got to like Sopranos and Breaking Bad that we actually got into some more,
What about
edgier type of
NYPD
subject.
Blue?
NYPD Blue, and Law and Order, those two were kind of safe, but they were I think probably a rung above, because I'm also thinking like you then had the Commish, you then had the Shield. Remember when the Shield came out? And
Oh
the
gosh,
Wire?
yeah.
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 The Shield and the Wire kind of changed the game a little bit more. That's when they started getting to edgier stuff. But that's
I
in
didn't
the
watch a
early
lot of those shows, to be
2000s.
honest. Like live action shows for me were few and far between as far as like what I really got hooked on. I watched A Crap Ton of Bones. That was my show.
Oh, Bones, yes. Well, that's in your tail end of the comfort procedurals. And then we started getting into, well, the procedural is no longer going to be the procedural anymore. It's now going to be a will they, won't they in the procedural. So then you have Bones and Castle, which ran up side by side, which kind of do the same thing. I think they try to do the same with The Mentalist.
I actually liked Castle too. Yeah.
Well, Castle's very fun. I mean,
it is fun.
Nathan Fillion really sold the hell out of that.
Its finale is pretty divisive. I wasn't mad about it. I was like, okay, yeah, it's fine, whatever. But the entire show leading up to it, just about, Nathan Fillion is a gem. Like he's too charming not to enjoy on screen.
Oh yeah, that's why I like The Rookie.
Yeah, and I still haven't watched that, but like I loved him in Firefly. You
can't be a rookie now. It's been like 5 years.
Yeah,
right. Like how many years are you
TO.
a rookie?
They changed it to now. He follows or he trains rookies now.
Oh, okay. Well, at least
so it's TJ
got
Hooker.
logical.
Yeah, pretty much. He picked up
at least
this.
They got smart with it.
He's got this Mexican lady who's his TO, who's his rookie, and she like is partly psychic or some dumb shit. It's not like actual psychic. It's weird, but it's still funny. It's kind of like watching the A-Team every week because they just go on these really absurd missions. They're not even like regular cops anymore. They're super cops. They just
I'd have beaten an old lady with a stick and dug her grave for her to get a Nathan Fillion led Hal Jordan film.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nathan wanted to do Hal
He's
Jordan.
Too old now unless we're deliberately doing older Hal Jordan because he's phenomenal as his voice actor.
He is, but now he's playing Guy Gardner.
I know, and that actually
which is weird, but
off.
The thing is, he could do it. That's the problem. Like he could do it.
It's not that I don't think he has the acting chops to do it. I'm fully cognizant that he probably does, but for so many years he's been the VA for Hal Jordan, and he looks a lot more like Hal Jordan, and the character that I typically see him play in other live action performances of his is a lot more like Hal Jordan. And maybe that's a bit of a typecast. Yeah, it is. And that's entirely fine because I see him as like the perfect Hal Jordan, and it makes me angry that he is playing Guy Gardner because I fucking hate Guy Gardner.
Well, Guy Gardner's the arrogant Green Lantern, yeah.
Like Guy Gardner's the one that I want to see die, not overcome. Not overcome like insurmountable odds, get the girl at the end, and beat the piss out of the bad guy just because he's too damn stubborn to go down, right? Like that's Hal Jordan, and I'm not gonna get to see that.
Well,
instead I got Ryan Reynolds.
Well, look, with the Marvels having shit the bed, and the Flash having shit the bed, and Blue Beetle having shit the bed, and Aquaman probably gonna shit the bed. I know they say
it's got Amber Heard in it. Of course it's gonna.
Yeah. But I know they say there's no superhero fatigue, but these failures have to at least hurt the next film that comes out, no matter if it's Marvel or DC. Because superhero movies in general just kind of are hurting. They're not what they were 10 years ago, 5 years ago even.
They really are. And I'm going to sound like I'm going to sound like a copy of a broken record of Eric, because he's been saying this for a while, but I've also been saying it for a while. Though I'll give credit where credit's due. The superhero fatigue thing, it's not a thing.
No, it's not real.
It's not a thing. It is an excuse. It's a scapegoat. It's garbage fatigue. It's dog shit fatigue. We've had so many instances in a row, sequentially, of really bad superhero films and really bad superhero TV series or streaming series. And it become the go-to excuse. Oh, people are just sick of superhero content. Well, then why the fuck are you still making it? If that's truly the case, then, and sorry to raise my voice, but if it's truly superhero fatigue, then why the hell are you still making it? Because it's not superhero fatigue. It's dog shit fatigue. It's people are sick of garbage material with characters that happen to have superheroes in them. If all of Phase 4, or the majority at least of Phase 4 and Phase 5 thus far, had been at least decent or solid or even good, this would not be a conversation.
Oh yeah,
the term superhero fatigue would never have left the mainstream access media's lips. That's a horseshit excuse.
They've been saying it since 2005.
Which makes absolutely zero sense. I don't know why I took off my glasses. It makes zero sense. That's
Because you're going to give away your secret identity, Clark.
No, I'm getting serious now, is what it is, I guess. Because in 2005, what are you talking about? Superhero fatigue. Barely any superhero movies had come out at that point. What we had
They had X-Men's and Spider-Man and Batman Begins all debuted around that period. And the trades were talking about superhero fatigue, and then they brought it back up again in 2008.
But all of those films were doing really well.
Exactly. And then they brought up again in 2012. It's a constant thing that the trades have been using. It's never real. And I can give you 2 examples of franchises that lasted for decades without any type of fatigue. James Bond and Star Trek. Star Trek from 87 to 2005 ran consecutively. Nobody got tired of it. People were
what was the qualifying What was the qualifying factor in that script?
They were popular, well-produced shows that came in on time, under budget, and the only reason Enterprise was canceled is because Les Moonves didn't like it.
It was good. It was enjoyable. The people who were here for Star Trek, the people who were here for James Bond, got a product that they could enjoy. That's all it was. If you were still producing... Yeah. If you were still producing stuff on the level of quality of phases 1 through 3 for the MCU, guess what would be happening? You'd still be crapping out billion-dollar films or close to billion-dollar films like it was nothing. But you're not. You're actually putting in... It's... I don't even want to use the ideological excuse now, because honestly, that feels like lazy on our part. It's really just bad writing now. It's bad writing. It's bad cutting. It's poor CGI use. It's horrendous budgeting. Man, bad budgeting is probably the understatement of the century. And so, what are you talking about superhero fatigue? People love superheroes. Superheroes are universal. Freaking Japan is putting out anime that is doing superheroes better than the West is right now. When you talk about things like My Hero Academia, because superheroes are universally relatable, or at least when they're well written, they ought to be.
Yeah, we don't have horror film fatigue, and horror film has been a thing since the dawn of film. It's never stopped.
Yeah, you don't see horror film fatigue. Horror films and horror films can vary in quality from either end of the spectrum. You have you have your
more
best
horror films every year.
garbage.
You have at least 10 times the amount of horror films every year than you do any superhero film.
Yeah, and nobody talks about horror film fatigue.
Exactly,
right?
There's no
you never hear
horror film fatigue.
But you know who doesn't make doesn't make horror films? You know who doesn't make horror films?
Disney.
Yeah.
Well, one thing about horror
they don't
films
get the
is
excuse.
horror films introduce new ideas into filmmaking. I don't really see new ideas or themes ever introduced in a superhero film. I just see a conglomerate or the biggest things all rolled into one. And I like superhero movies. Who am I to tell you I don't want them? I'm just saying, at least horror movies try something new, and they're usually an achievement type of thing where it's they'll take a micro budget and turn it into something bigger, or they'll capture.
If you haven't seen American Mary yet, chat, go watch it. That film's badass.
Mm-hmm.
It's by the Soska sisters.
And Catherine Isabel, right? I just still think of her as the chick from Freddy versus Jason that probably has the dumbest death in that movie.
It's a good movie. It's such a good movie. Not Freddy versus Jason. That's not a good movie.
I was about to say, like, Freddy versus Jason's
no,
fine.
No.
I wasn't going to say it's such a good movie, though. Whew.
No, no, American Mary. American
I
Mary
think
is a really good movie.
maybe superhero fatigue is the wrong thing, but I do think people can be burnt out on brands, and it just depends on the brand.
And you know what
Like,
happens?
Look at the
You know-
brand of
you
The
know-
Exorcist. That was a bad idea. Doing another
Yeah.
Exorcist movie, and I
It's
think doing
because-
another Marvel's movie is another bad idea.
It's because brands can be damaged. People forget in the late 90s, early 2000s, Marvel was on the verge of bankruptcy.
For
People-
the
Well,
third
they filed
time
for
in their
bankruptcy
career.
multiple
Yeah,
times.
from multiple times. Yes, this is true. This is actually true. And then there was that stint from the late 2000s through the 2010s where people thought that Marvel was untouchable and Disney was untouchable because they owned
Well,
Marvel.
Ike Perlmutter purchased Marvel through Toy Biz, and through a lot of desperation, they managed to get Blade made. They managed to get the X-Men made. They managed to get
The
Spider-Man made.
MCU does not happen without that first Blade film.
Correct. They ended up taking all the money that they could so that Ike could start his own Marvel Studios and not have it be Marvel Entertainment associated with all the contracts that they had to basically license out and lose essentially during the acquisition. And the whole goal with Marvel Studios was we're going to try and make some very profitable films that will allow us to bring all the Marvel character film and television rights back under one house again. And after
Took
the
'em a
immediate
while.
success of Iron Man, Disney, by way of Bob Iger, saw, ooh, we need to get on this on the ground floor. And somehow, and I'm blaming Ike Perlmutter for this as well, because he is responsible, somehow convinced Ike to sell Marvel entirely to Disney in addition to their distribution contract. They got the distribution contract stuff first. Ike Perlmutter stayed on as head of Marvel and technically Marvel Studios up until Avengers, when the finalization of that sale was complete, because it took many years for Disney to get it all allocated. And then shortly after that, Ike Perlmutter is pushed out. And there's now no one leading the charge to actually maintain the integrity of the brand, at least on the studio side of things. I still believe,
or at
Ike
least on the
Perlmutter
budgeting side.
Oh yeah, and it just
That's
kind
the
of
biggest issue, honestly, right now, because they're just digging themselves deeper and deeper into the red.
It really is. And the sad thing is that if Ike Perlmutter just stuck with his distribution contract with Paramount and the ones that he had with Universal and the negotiating one that he was doing with Fox at the time, Marvel Studios would still be its own independent studio. It would never have faced any of the softening that Disney injected upon it. And I would not be surprised if at some point they were able to acquire full rights to Hulk, Spider-Man away from Sony, Fantastic Four, and X-Men away from Fox, and have it all under one roof of Marvel Studios and just have various deals, like a Marvel Cinematic Universe across multiple studios contributing to the overall whole, because that's what they had. The Incredible Hulk was Universal, and that's part of the MCU that was paired with Iron Man as the first runs. You would have then had Fox Studios doing the X-Men MCU versions of their characters along with Fantastic Four. You would have had Sony doing the Spider-Man with the MCU characters, and networked all with Paramount and stuff. Disney and Warner Brothers would have been the only two studios left out as a result of that. Disney having no interest in superheroes anyways at the time, and Warner Brothers being fine because they have DC.
Let's be real. They still have no real interest in superheroes.
They still really don't. But the fact of the matter is that, I mean, Ike saved Marvel and then ruined it at the same time. And then Feige did his own thing because I think he had a good team going that he happened to be a part of. And then he got power hungry. He got arrogant. He got negatively influenced by the powers that be at Disney. And it just went off the rails because as soon as Ike was out and all of his team that was part of the infrastructure to maintain the quality of Marvel was out, it was all position. That was done in two folds. Number one, to allow Feige time to work on the Disney Plus series. And number two, if something fails, they have the scapegoat of Victoria Alonso to take all the blame, because number one, you put a producer who's in charge of post-production when your general producer is in charge of development, pre-production, production, and post, which means that you have a singular voice in tandem with the director and the writer and some of the influential members of the cast as to what's going on. Instead, you now have a third-party person coming in who says, you know what? There's not enough female empowerment in this film that was originally shot. I'm going to order reshoots to go back and re-inject it, and there's nothing the producer of production can do because I'm the producer of post-production, which means I oversee how the final product looks. And that is what happened for phase 4 and 5, up until Victoria was ejected for basically failing to meet her job, meeting the duties of her job, and also, and this is not really the reason why they got rid of her, because she went off and produced her own independent film called Argentina 1985. That is it. It is mismanagement by and large. One thing I can only say to anyone out there on the independent sphere, if you're making your own company and you're doing your own thing, never sell it to a big conglomerate, because they will gut what is valuable out of it to make it work for themselves, and it'll lose its soul. And you have I'd rather have you guys in the independent sphere take your company as far as it can and go under your own means, as opposed to having to sell it out and having being dismantled and destroyed and lining the pockets of someone else or another company decades after you're dead, because that's what's going to happen. Disney has Star Wars forever. They will never be able to separate it from Disney, and even if unless Disney itself collapses, which will not happen in our lifetimes, unless Disney itself collapses and is sold off for parts, and their property is completely dismantled and changed into like redeveloped into cities or something else. Star Wars and Disney are buried together. They're intertwined. Marvel, on the other hand, is independent enough within the confines of Disney that if they had the money themselves, that's not part of Disney's coffers, could buy themselves out of their own contract and be an independent studio again. They could do that. The problem is the people currently overseeing Marvel don't want to do that right now because Disney's footing the bill.
No, and because there's less risk involved to them personally. That's one of the big issues right now in the industry, where people
it's less
people
risk,
don't want
but
to actually take risks and
the thing is,
produce things and bet on themselves.
well, that's the thing. Like a smart businessman would be like, if we get away from Disney, we can actually do some more edgier stuff without losing our core fan base. Disney, because they lied to the audience about being a family brand, and I have to remind people, go back and look at all of their cast members from the Mickey Mouse Club, whether it be from the 60s, the 70s, or the 90s. There's a lot of tragic stories and child abuse that happening among those. That is the real Disney. Not Walt. I'm talking about the company.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, it's all a facade. But if someone got a hold of Marvel and said, you know what, we're going to distance ourselves from Disney distribution. We're going to make our own edgy films. We're going to find other studios to distribute.
We'd also have to get rid of Feige, because Feige,
he wouldn't survive. Yeah.
Feige has proved himself to be somebody who had like moderately sciential knowledge of the Marvel universe, like enough to pass for the first few phases. But he became that textbook like geek that became in with the cool kids, and therefore he no longer acted like a geek.
Well, given the stories that he pushed, it seemed like his fan base of Marvel comics started in the 90s. Because again, Infinity Saga, that's a 1990s story. What other Ultron was probably maybe the ones that were predate the 90s, but they disposed of that really quick. And I'm not seeing any of the other films that kind of have anything to do prior to the turn of the century when it comes to the story arcs, aside from the Iron Man origin and maybe Captain America. It's all like it's all within the last 10 years.
He freaking shot down Demon in a Bottle.
Yeah, he did. Well, no, Disney shot that down. He was actually gung-ho for that. But Disney said, we are not going to buy Marvel if you have a story about alcoholism as one of your main characters. And Ike really wanted that deal. So that's where you have conflict. That's where Favreau,
that's unfortunate,
being
because
ejected
that would have
from
been
a director, was able
banger.
to hold on as a producer and being Happy Hogan for as long as he could. But he was basically soft pushed out. Which is unfortunate, because here's the other part too.
That would have been a far stronger arc for Tony.
Oh yeah, Kevin Feige may have screwed the pooch at this point, but up until that point, the team that he made with Luis Esposito and all those other guys, they were a solid team. And Kevin Feige definitely learned a great deal of how to produce from working under Lauren Schuler Donner on all of those Marvel films that she produced, as well as other superhero films in the meantime. And he took enough of those lessons to make Marvel work through his contributions as well. Like he had something there. The problem is that as his ego got bigger, as his celebrity got bigger, as he did the one thing a producer should never do, which is never take credit for something you're not actually a part of, he did. It basically killed Marvel before Marvel actually ended up dying, because everybody was lauding Kevin Feige, just as so many misguided people have lauded Christopher Nolan as a do no wrong director. I hated that in Nolan We Trust thing, because it's like the moment you put any filmmaker, any producer, any actor, or anything on a pedestal where they can do no wrong, they have therefore lost the ability of quality control of their own work. And it's doomed, always going to be doomed, because if there's no one around them to say, hey, you sure you want to do this? Or can you maybe better elaborate on what you're trying to do so I can get on the same page so we can make sure this works and is being successful? The moment you can't do that or don't have anyone around you that allows you to do that is the moment you are doomed. And George Lucas was pitch perfect in that thing with The Phantom Menace. Like, look at that documentary. They all kiss his butt, say, yes, 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 George. As soon as he leaves the room, I don't know if this is going to work. It's like, if you don't tell George that, and if you don't have the balls to tell George that, or your boss that, and you're the creative department, just start counting the days, because you're working on borrowed time. And that's what happens with Marvel. I've seen it with Marvel now. They've been working on borrowed time. The only way back is to get some fresh blood producers, some fresh blood writers that know how to write, and some directors that actually have a stamp on things, maybe with some experience behind them, instead of these fresh out of the womb directors that they've been hiring, so that you can actually focus in on getting a franchise which will have financial failures until people realize that the quality has changed. So we could have some great Marvel movies coming out in the next 5 years, but the brand is so damaged that only the diehard fans are going to be watching it. And then after that, it's going to take a while for the rest of the normies to rediscover it and then realize, oh, Marvel and their quality is back. Then they're going to start getting closer to that $1 billion box office if they can maintain it over and over again. But they're going to face a lot more suffering as a result of all the mistakes they've made now, because audiences are very savvy when it comes to pattern recognition. And if the last 5 Marvel movies sucked, then they're going to assume the next 5 are going to suck. And until one of those next 5 actually is good and is being properly lauded and authentically lauded, they're not going to show up. And they're going to be late to the game, but they will show up eventually, which means you got to take the hit on that.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the brands being damaged. This applies to basically all of the biggest IPs right now. Star Wars, DC, Marvel. Their brands become so incredibly tarnished that I say this all the time. These studios traded their guaranteed audience, us, our longtime lifer fans, for the general audience of normies. But the normies, they're fickle and fleeting as an audience, and they really only care about a thing insofar as it's the hot topic conversation. It's the main thing in the cultural zeitgeist, right? So when the MCU was at its peak, of course everybody and their brothers Goldfish was going to see the film because it was the hot topic conversation, and they want to be a part of that conversation. Well, now they're not interested in being a part of the conversation because there's no real conversation happening, because nobody's going to see the film. The people that would generate the hype for the film would be us, the fans. We're excited. The new Spider-Man film looks awesome. Let's get excited about it, right? So then all of a sudden that trickles through all of our friends, their friends' friends, and their families, and etc. And then it gets to the normies that, they don't know Peter Parker from Adam, but that doesn't matter. It's the hot topic of conversation. So they go to see it anyway, and maybe they'll get the collector's edition tub of popcorn or whatever, or the big
for
gulp
$40,
cup, whatever it
like
is.
the Marvels one.
Yeah, was it really that much? My God,
It was $40. Seriously,
That's
it's just a flirkin egg, and it's $40.
That is stupid. But at most, that's what
3
you're going
cents
to get,
worth
right?
of plastic for $40. Yeah.
And maybe they'll
That's the
buy a
Disney way.
T-shirt that they'll wear once and a pop figure they'll forget they have in 2 months, right? That's the best you're going to get out of the normie audience. Well, now you don't even have them. Your brand is tarnished because nobody is interested in it now. Now you have apathy, which is the last thing you want felt towards your brand. Your longtime fans are no longer interested because you began producing a product that was pretty blatantly telling the fans this isn't made for you anymore. And in your marketing, you were telling them. Your creators that were in charge of the projects, or the actors that were a part of the projects, were telling them this isn't made for you. And then the normies got disinterested because the product wasn't good and nobody was watching it and talking about it. the brands are damaged, it's going to take a while for that to course correct and for people to even give a damn. So it's going to take that's twofold, right? It's going to take a long time for them to actually course correct and start producing good content again. And then it's going to take that, which we'll call X, it's going to take X plus Y amount of time for people to actually care again. Because right now, they're associating Star Wars and DC and Marvel films with like subpar movies that like, okay, like I ate popcorn while I watched this. That's the most memorable thing.
Yeah, you're
Do people
describing
even
Jason
talk about
Statham's
Star
career.
Wars?
But that's what these brands have become.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. None of these brands are immortal in terms of, or rather, okay, immortal maybe, impervious no. They're not
Correct.
impervious to damage. And as of right now, they are heavily damaged. And that's due to massive mismanagement.
What do you guys think about the Deadline article that talked about Disney Plus as the culprit for a lot of these failures? Because you can't stretch out a brand to cinemas and at home. It needs to stay exclusively to cinemas, and what's at home needs to stay exclusively to home.
I think
how
it's
do you feel
BS
about
as
that
an
assessment?
excuse. I think
Yeah.
that's a BS excuse because if the writing was still there and the quality of the production was still there, it wouldn't matter. This wouldn't be a conversation.
Exactly. The thing is, it all comes down to execution. And I'll tell you this. So Kevin Feige and co over at the MCU at Marvel Studios proved the very thing that producers in 1980 were trying to do after the success of Superman, which was that we got to do a Batman film and we got to cross these over. And Warner Brothers is like, oh, that seems like a big endeavor. It seems too complicated. We don't want to do it. For 25 years after Superman came out, there's always been new producers trying to say, listen, we can integrate these. We can cross them over. We can do stuff like they're doing in the comics. And Warner Brothers said no every single time. Then Kevin Feige and co. do it with Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, Thor, and it takes off. And what does DC do? Oh, crap. We got to do this because we're technically the father studio of superhero films. Why didn't we do this? Well, people came after you for decades. And in those decades of them saying no, producers were trying to figure out, well, okay, how do we just do this anyways? And at the turn of the century, when they were starting to ramp up with this, especially after the success of X-Men and Spider-Man, they were saying it would be brilliant if we could kind of take the Star Trek model, which is, oh, we have this cast of the television series also doing feature films as well. We did that with the original series. We've done that with Next Generation. There were talks about doing that with Deep Space Nine before I or Stephen Bear decided to throw that out the window. There was then talks with Voyager and definitely with Enterprise. And they're all saying, yeah, we can do this. You can do a television series and then have a feature film event and make it work. You just have to be very due diligent about it. The formula, or at least the premise of the formula for Disney Plus shows feeding into the MCU and vice versa, is sound so long as the audience is retained. And
you still have to have an invested audience, but that's the issue right now, right? There's no invested audience because nobody's watching the shows because the shows aren't interesting and they're not.
And the thing is, they felt it looked like it was interesting with WandaVision because that trailer garnered a lot of views, got a lot of interest.
It started interesting. Yeah,
started hot and big, and they thought, you know what, we're gonna do no wrong on this. And then we saw what the rest of WandaVision was, and it dropped the ball. And then we're noticing, okay, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is dropping the ball. Loki's dropping the ball. Moon Knight and Hawkeye, they're just not there.
I completely forgot that they did Moon Knight.
People will watch.
I didn't even watch it.
Exactly.
I completely forgot that even existed.
Here's
I
the other
remember
part, too.
announcing it. I'm like, you're doing Moon Knight?
Agent Carter did really well the first season. Then it suffered in season 2.
Well, Haley
then was canceled. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was popular for the first season, but was just another derivative Joss Whedon show. And Kevin Feige didn't like the way it was going. And so
I liked the first 2 seasons of Agents.
That's fine.
And then after that, it was like,
it was, what is this? Yeah.
Why? Why are we still doing this?
And the thing is that it started off strong where it's like, okay, you've got potential where you can actually have other stories, street level characters, street level superheroes or something orbiting around the movies without them necessarily impacting the what you're planning to do with the movies and vice versa. It was
like
kind
when
of
they did
there.
Punisher and Daredevil, which
then
I actually
Ghost Rider.
admittedly, okay, Jen, Sylvia, I love you. Please don't hate me. I actually haven't watched either of those shows yet.
You haven't watched Daredevil?
I've seen the pilot episode. That's it.
It's too
And it
late
was
for you
good.
to watch it at this
And
point.
it was good. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But I just never wound up. It came out at a time and was still running at a time where I just had zero free time because I was just busting my butt on things that were not fulfilling, but paid the bills. And I was not watching basically anything that was coming out at the time, honestly.
Well, you got to remember, if you
I've
ever
been
do go
told that
back
they
to,
were both very good.
if you ever go back to watch it, you have to take into account that they were considered canon at the time, and now they're not. So, like, that's another thing too with these fucking shows. It's like, one year they're in the universe and canon, the next they're not. It's like, pick one, because when you
There's no
watch Daredevil, they talk. What'd you say?
There's no conviction to them. They're not
No.
They're not confident enough in those shows to say, "Yep, this is how we're going to make it work with our series, with our film franchise." And you know what? That's a tragic thing. I think the stuff that James Gunn is attempting to do is a little bit possibly biting more off than he can chew, because they're trying to integrate cartoons, television, video games, and film all into one.
I think he's also starting at the wrong point continuity-wise, but that's just
Possibly,
me as
yeah.
a DC
Because
fan.
again, we have again, there's still so little actually revealed of what's actually going on over there.
Well, we know that they're starting with the least liked Robin, so.
Well, that's what's been announced, but those are subject to change, because I've already heard some inklings that things are not going to be going as planned outside of anything that is not Superman Legacy. So that's, I have no idea.
That would make me happy, because I have really no interest in starting with Damian Wayne as the.
Damian is a troll character created by Grant Morrison just to make fun of multiple Robins, I think.
Damian can be a legitimately interesting character. He's a little shit, but he can be a legitimately interesting character in the right hands, and he was in Super Sons, but that's because Peter Tomasi is a phenomenal writer.
I don't like characters. I don't like child characters in comic book anything. Like, in real life, fine, but like, I don't want to watch children's superheroes or like even teenage superheroes anymore. That like angsty whatever. I'm past that point.
You're breaking my heart, man. I grew up with Teen Titans. I'm not talking about the cartoon. I'm talking about the comics. Like Teen Titans is my shit.
The only teenage thing I ever liked as a kid was the Power Rangers, because they were in high school. But like, even Spider-Man was in college when I was a kid.
They were all grown ass adults playing those characters.
That's fair.
Ain't not a single damn one of them was a teenager.
I'm a firm believer
that he played Jason. He was 18.
Yeah, really?
Was he the youngest one?
He's the youngest one.
Shit, he still looked older than I did when I was 18.
I mean, it could, be the kung fu or whatever he does. No, but I do think that if DC wants to make a bigger splash, don't make it too kiddified, because kids like older stuff too.
Kids want to grow up. They look at adults and they're like, "Wow, that's cool. Look at all the stuff they can do that I can't. I want to be a grown up now." They're impatient that way. Always are. And when you understand that if you're writing for kids, you're really just writing for the adult that's eventually going to emerge out of them. That's when you're actually going to corner them in. That's why Batman the Animated Series cartoon was so well received by kids and adults, because it didn't play down to them. Especially like that whole Merry Batman thing that Amazon's releasing this Christmas. That is horrible. That is playing down, patronizing children and patronizing anyone else. But the mere fact to
look
get back,
at the 90s X-Men cartoon, they didn't write down to their audience. What they did was tell stories that a younger audience could connect with and enjoy at some level. But then if they went back and watched it when they were older, maybe, and had more life experiences and more knowledge in general, they understood it on a deeper level.
They would. Right? And then they'd also have a drinking game.
They would garner way more from it.
Well, because you have the drinking game of drink every time Scott yells Gene.
or Gene yells Scott.
Yeah.
You are not going to make it very long.
You are blacked out by episode
3 episodes 2. And you are sloshed.
You're going to pass out like
done,
Jean Grey
son.
does.
You are done.
But to that point, yeah, there is a way you can actually find a balance. Like I still am a firm believer, as much as I do love the feature films of superheroes, I think they're far better suited to a miniseries format for television on a controlled budget, because that is what they started as mini series stories. They were single issue comics or 3 or 4 parter story arcs in the comics. That's what their genre is. That's what they were written to. That's how they work. They have to have multiple adventures, and you get more out of a cast, especially if you hit the jackpot and get a perfect cast for those characters. You get way more stories and way more potential out of them on a television budget and a television schedule than you do with feature films, which takes 3 years for one story, where in 3 years you've got 3 seasons. But be it 10, 16, or 22 episodes, it's a lot to cover. It can resonate and hit harder. And, it's steady work for everybody who's working on those shows. I despise Smallville. I think it's a really terrible show, and also kind of a ground zero for your woke and superhero teams for one superhero
Well,
thing.
that's where there are a lot
But
of things
you got
that I
10
love about
seasons out of that.
Smallville. There are a lot of things that I love about Smallville. There are a lot of things that I hate about Smallville, because to your point, that's where a lot of this crap from the CW started. A lot of the race swapping, a lot of the feelings in hallways,
Yep.
waste of an episode,
Standing, looking out
garbage.
into the horizon, waiting for another actor to come in to start the scene.
Yeah,
It's
that's where we started the whole, there's got to be a love triangle for fucking everything, and we can't just have something clear cut and concise that just works with the plot and runs with the plot. But there were also a lot of moments I loved, and there were some really memorable performances. John Schneider freaking killed
John
it.
Schneider, John Glover, and Ed O'Toole.
John Glover was so good, and both when he was a completely insufferable asshole bad guy, and when he kind of almost like halfway face turned towards the latter half of the series.
He became the emissary to Jor-El shortly after he's body swapped with Clark.
Yeah, and that was, oh man, he is and that's really just a credit to John Glover as an actor. Like, he is absolutely outstanding.
He also played a really better Clark when he was body swapped as Clark than Tom Welling did.
There were some fantastic casting choices and performances there. There were also some really underwhelming ones. And Kristen Krieg she has no personality as an actress. Like, I have nothing against her personally,
but she's exotic looking, so she gets a lot of work.
Just has no.
Yeah, she played Chun-Li. That was terrible.
Yeah, like she's a pretty girl, and I'm sure she's nice as all hell, but like, she's not a particularly.
I wouldn't give her that much credit.
actress.
She cheated on her boyfriend Scotty, so
Oh,
she's kind of a bitch to me.
Okay,
well,
I
Scotty
understood
didn't
that
know
reference.
until it was too
Scotty
late.
didn't know. Yeah, I understood that. That took me a second. It took me only a second. Like, there were some great casting choices in that series, but there were also some really piss poor ones for sure. And it's where a lot of the CW bullshit started.
I've watched exactly 0 episodes of Smallville, and
I own the entire series.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No one's perfect. No one's perfect. I don't judge. So,
hey, here's the thing, and this is something super important that I think a lot of people have lost sight of. We need to be able to criticize the things that we love and praise the things that we hate when they either do something garbage or do something good.
Right.
And that can happen on both ends. And a lot of people have lost the ability to do exactly that.
I wish I've just...
That's a level of intellectual honesty I think we really need to get back to as a fandom, because sometimes a good product will come out of some studio, whether it's games, comics, movies, whatever, that we would normally attribute to garbage, and they put out a gem. We need to be willing to acknowledge that, at least on an objective level. We can still hate the studio. We can still maybe even hate the people that were part of the project. But you got to be intellectually honest, and vice versa. Well, sometimes a studio that we would normally praise will put out something that's crap.
Like A24?
I'm thinking, well, it wasn't a crap game, but CD Projekt Red released Cyberpunk 2077 in an unplayable state for like 95% of people. So that's a problem.
I was in the 5% where it worked. I just thought it was too much like Cyberpunk Grand Theft Auto and stopped.
I was in the 5% where I had almost zero issues. I had like one problem that just required a quick save reload, and I was fine.
I get mad when I don't get any of the good glitches, because I want my games to like break. I want to be able to be like, oh my god, the head fell off, or the eyes don't work, or why doesn't this play? I want that.
I want to play the game, man.
I want my shit to be fucked up. Like, I always feel left out because like I don't get any glitches. I didn't get any bugs. Like when WWE 2K20 shit the bed, when I got a copy, it was like perfect. I was like, God damn it, this isn't even funny. So
Oh man.
But I'm all
But that's
about
an
the
important
intellectual
thing that a lot of
honesty.
people have lost sight of.
What?
You need to
I
be able
agree,
to
but
do both.
I agree with that, but I don't think there's been enough quality shit in a while to sit
No,
and
there
praise
hasn't.
something.
The
Like
last time that
realistically,
I was able to like legitimately say, okay, I normally hate this studio or this publisher, but they put out something that I actually love and is legitimately a good product, was EA being the publisher, hands off for the first time in their freaking lives, or at least in a decade and a half, publisher for Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. Like they just like, okay, here's your funding to Respawn, make us money. That was their involvement with those two games. And what happened? They produced two really freaking good Star Wars games, which I would argue are the best Star Wars content since before Disney bought the property.
I have yet to finish the first one, and I probably won't ever buy the second one because I didn't really like the first one enough to finish it. I was
Fair
just
enough.
like, all right, this is cool. I didn't like the controls. That's really what it was. I was like, I don't
Mm.
really like how this plays. I know
That's fair.
our buddy, what's his face, Mad, always would like to tell you how ugly the main character is, but I didn't care about that.
I think that Mad just has something against redheads. Maybe he
We
secretly
all
works
do.
for Hollywood. Damn.
Well, that's why I don't like the Flash, at least the one version of him, because he's got red hair.
Hold on. No, wait a second. You said that just because you know Wally's my favorite. I'm gonna put my glasses.
Also, I was at a friend's house this weekend, and he was showing me the same Flash figure you got, and I brought you up. I was like, "Oh, my other friend has this Flash figure," and then I just look. It's like the most recent superhero thing I've seen. Okay, I just want to break your heart. I'm sorry.
You do every single week, Jeff. Every single week.
Well, I
Stop.
hate to break your heart again, but it's time to get caught up with the audience so we don't go 4
Let's
hours.
get
'cause this is
caught
a
up
long
with
one.
our audience because the audience has been phenomenal and phenomenally patient.
Yes, and I also want to get up at the Ass Crack of Dawn and make a video for tomorrow. So,
Oh,
folks,
shoot.
check that out.
When are you bringing back Good Morning Pop Culture, Jeff? I know I'm not the only person that's asked this question.
Not this year.
Oh.
Definitely not this year.
Okay. Well, we've got what? It's a month and a half. Okay. All right.
Look,
Chat,
Wokebusters has to be finished.
Spam him for bringing back Good Morning Pop Culture at the beginning of 2024, and please show up in the chat.
Yeah, it's got to do the
So
numbers because like it's
so
not worth
worth
it
it.
right now. That's why the second time I was like, yeah, I'm
No,
not
I
going to do this
totally get it.
anymore.
I totally get.
'Cause
I
everyone was like,
enjoyed
I'm
it.
so
though,
excited
because-
for it.
Yeah, I enjoyed the show too because it's just kind of a relaxing, chill, hangout geek stream talking about whatever, and I'm like, cool. Like I'm having my coffee, I'm listening to Good Morning Pop Culture, I'm getting prepped for my day. This is awesome. And then you stopped, and I was sad. Jeff.
Well, you're gonna have to be sad, man. It's up to
Yeah,
the
he
nearly
gave no
200,000
shits.
people. Oh no, it's it's fun, but it doesn't really help WCBS out. So it's
I totally get it. I am a businessman. I get it. I just had to take it personally for a moment.
That's okay. Look, it was fun to do. It was enjoyable. And if I try it again and all of a sudden people are like, holy shit, sure, we'll do it as long as people stick around for it. Because that's
You hear that,
the
chat?
one thing that's
He's gonna
it's
do
the
what
one thing that's dependent. Yeah, the people. It's the people's. We're called the People's
Jeff is a
Republic
man
of
of
Pop
the people.
Culture.
Yeah, exactly. He's a man of the people. So people show up and he will be there. He will do it.
Yeah. So yeah, folks, that's how you can get Good Morning Pop Culture to come back. Or if somebody gives us a small loan of $1 million to sponsor it, then we'll gladly do it for 2 or 3 years. So
yeah, for sure. All right, let's see what the audience has been saying.
well, we got the word of the day from Shrubbles08, who says the word of the day is Karen. The Marvel's Karens. How Stella got her Karen back, or how Karen got her groove back. Star Wars, the Force is Karen, and I am Karen, and fistful of Karens.
Raiders
Raiders
I
of the
Shrunk
Lost
the
Karens.
Oh, why?
Is it Raiders of the Lost Karen Allen? Because I get behind that one.
Karen Busters?
That's Ghostbusters 2016. Okay.
Lord of the Karens?
Club Karen.
Loved Karen.
Ooh, I like that one.
That's
Oh,
not bad.
here's a
For
pun.
Karen.
Thank you for Karen.
Charlie's Karens.
Script. That's a good one.
Thank you for. Is that like thank you for smoking?
Yeah, just thank you. For Karen.
That's an underratedly good movie.
It's a brilliant film. Yeah.
Put that out there.
Is that Jim Carrey?
But no,
Or is that I
it's,
Love You? I'm thinking of I Love You,
Aaron
Philip Morris.
Eckhart.
Sorry.
Aaron
That's
Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart, and it's Jason Reitman wrote and direct.
Yeah. Aaron
Oh,
Eckhart
okay.
is a underratedly good actor. Like that man is a good actor.
Oh, have you seen
incredibly
My Name is
underutilized.
Bill with Aaron Eckhart? It's hysterical.
Mhm.
I'll have to check it
It's
out. I have not.
him and I think Elizabeth Banks and Timothy Oliphant, and it's a really funny independent.
And Timothy Oliphant?
Yeah,
I'm suddenly interested.
it's
because
either
that's
My Name
two
is Bill or
really
I'm
good
Bill.
actors.
It's really funny. It's really funny.
Timothy Oliphant's a really good actor. In my opinion, he does not get enough roles.
Well, he was the dream like the heartthrob dreamy actor for a while there. He then did a
Really?
couple of serious roles that didn't work out too well. But then he did some comedies where he played some serious stuff really well in those comedies and it worked. I think some of the best acting he's done was in a Netflix series called Santa Clarita Diet.
I'll
Because
watch that.
he played very much against type, but he somehow sold it. And
I've yet to see him in something where I'm like, yeah, this isn't or at least he's not good.
yeah.
I'm convinced that there's no such thing as him not being good in something. The product itself could be subpar, sure, but Timothy Oliphant, I think he's one of those actors where it's like his performance, regardless of what the project is that he's attached to, his performance is going to be really good.
Even Mandalorian?
Yeah, I liked him as the fucking, what was it? Not sheriff.
He was the
What the hell
marshal.
was he? Yeah, the marshal. That's what it was. Like, I liked him. I really did. I liked Timothy Oliphant in just about anything I've ever seen him in. I think he has an incredibly wide range as an actor. Shit, I wish I had half of his talent.
Maybe
think
one
he's
day.
fantastic.
If you really work hard.
Maybe if I believe in the heart of the cards, I'll try.
I don't understand that reference. I'm sorry.
It's a Yu-Gi-Oh reference. It's okay. I'm outing myself as a geek. Suddenly the Saskas don't want to talk to me anymore.
I don't want to talk to you either, man. It's Pokemon cards
Shit,
or bust.
man.
CFO.
Come on.
That's mean.
You know I'm a Pokemon geek, all right? Like, you don't even... Come on.
I gave up on Pokemon very quickly, man. Like, once I
did
caught
not.
the
They
original
hooked me.
150, I was like, this is lame.
They hooked me when I was like 8.5 years old, and they never got their claws out. I've been giving them asses.
Wait, how
money
old are
ever
you?
since.
Aren't we the same age?
Yeah.
Has Pokemon really been around that? Oh, yeah, we started with the
Yes,
fucking Game
it
Boy
has
games. I was like,
been,
it's been
dude.
that long? I was like, I just
Yes.
thought like I was 10 when the show came out.
No,
I didn't
Jeff,
play the
we're
games.
both just really freaking old now.
I think I was in like
Jen
the
and Sylvia
ninth
said we
grade when
love us some
Pokemon
Pokemon,
came
bro.
out.
I'm a Mewtwo girl. Mewtwo is my favorite Pokemon next to Charizard. I knew I loved those ladies.
I don't have a favorite Pokemon anymore.
Wow. Jeff's
It's
too
dead.
cool
That's
for
my favorite
Pokemon.
No, man, what actually happened is I got into wrestling as a kid, and I was like,
I thought
Like,
you were
if you
about to
peek
say
at-
something snarky, like I got into like, grown up shit. Like
no, I found wrestling, and I thought I could watch Ash cry about Pikachu and like lose constantly, or The Rock. I was like, The Rock
Ash-
is way cooler than Pokemon.
Ash was pretty shit. Yeah. Yeah, The Rock is way cooler. But I mean, let's be real here. The Rock, in terms of like at least his wrestling persona, he's gonna be cooler than just about anybody. So
Yeah, I don't
it's
even.
kind of an
yeah, the
unfair comparison.
Yeah, the actor's not even on my radar anymore. Like, he shits the bed with Black Adam. I don't think he'll ever play another superhero. Hopefully not.
Man, let's not go down that rabbit hole. What's the next super
There's
chat?
another thing that was not very woke and it was masculine driven film and nobody wanted to go see it.
Yeah, nobody was interested because the DC brand was way too damaged. And also, I think just a lot of people didn't give a crap about Black Adam as a character. I had fun with the film. I had issues with it, but I had a good time with it. I came out of the film being like, yeah, that was fun. I'm glad I saw it once. I haven't seen it since, but
I'd like my time back.
I, Okay, well, you and I had different
I
experiences.
learned from that movie of how to better identify plot contrivance in my own work. Because there's value to watching bad movies to try and see, or at least try to, if you can be honest with yourself, recognize choices you might have made as you're developing your own stuff and realizing how that didn't work, and then maybe taking a risk to try and rectify it so that it could work, and then hopefully it does pay off. But I mean, watch as much good as you can bad, because you'll start to be able to better identify when you're doing it yourself. Hopefully, if you want to be a better, storyteller, whether it's in writing or film, television, novels, comics, what have you, just try and ingest as much as you can to diversify your taste and understanding of method, because that's how you can kind of get better. In addition to getting feedback from your audience, like sell books and they reward it with positive criticism or constructive criticism. That helps always.
No, you're absolutely right. There's value in consuming things that are considered by the majority to be bad, right? Because you can look at that as being informative of like, okay,
It's like an autopsy. Where did they
what
go
was
wrong? How did
right?
this
No,
done?
or like a CSI, right? Like, okay, exactly. Where did this go wrong? What didn't work? What maybe did work if there were like small bits of it did? How can we take this and reform it in a way that might actually work down the line with in a different presentation, right? There's absolutely value to that. I imagine, shoot, with the millions and the millions of horror films that are out there. Listen, don't
be a
like that.
jabroni.
God, Jeff, I'm gone for a week, and this is I don't get no respect. No respect.
You just can't
at
steal
all.
the Rock's catchphrases and expect me to like cheer for you, man. You don't have sideburns.
I also have hair, so there's that too.
Back in the day, so did he.
Actually, I think Andrew would look really good with mutton chops.
He did, but his hairline was like up here. Like it started here. Like it started like halfway back on his head. He had like 8 head, not 4 head. But anyway.
That's why he was the Rock, because his head looked like a boulder.
Disrespect the people's champion like that.
I thought it was like an Easter Island thing, but okay, that works. Yeah.
From the Isle of Samoa.
Yeah.
Is that a bloodline thing or?
I see what you did there.
Shit.
Yeah. So, Script, you're telling me I need to diversify the content I consume to become a better writer, correct?
Absolutely, always. That's
so I should stop watching Love Boat reruns and watch other things.
No, you can learn great things from Love Boat reruns.
Yeah, like how weird the 70s were.
How weird the 70s were. I mean, one of the things that I enjoy doing, especially with clients, is teaching them how to create 2 characters that fall in love that we believe that they fall in love. Because so often they just want to pair them together right off the bat. And it's like, no. That's not fun.
That's called
you don't
fan
have to
fiction.
Make them enemies.
That's called shipping, and it's cancer.
You don't have to make them enemies, but you have to give them some sort of conflict where they can prove themselves to each other, whether their intention is to win one over or not. And then the byproduct comes in nature. It's like the most lucrative in regards to emotionally lucrative relationships I've had are with women who I was not looking for them. I just kind of stumbled into them, and the chemistry was just right, and the timing was just right, and we had a beautiful relationship. I'm going to be my 4-year anniversary with my current girlfriend is on the 22nd. And then prior to her, I dated
remembering the date.
And
That's
then
important. They don't like it when we don't remember the date.
Oh yeah. And then on top of that, like my first serious relationship was 10 years. So like, those things didn't come easy. And when you can capture that thing of the will they, won't they, and make it authentic and good, people really relish it.
Mm-hmm.
And also don't throw in stuff to deter that resolution unnaturally. Like, for instance, you get them really, really close, and all of a sudden you throw in, here's another person to come and steal the other person away. No, don't do that. That's trite. Find a more logical reason if you want to delay the inevitable, but don't contrive it.
See, folks, that's why you got to subscribe to Script's Patreon, because you get all kinds of wonderful advice like this, correct?
Yeah, I do post it out. I'm actually going to be talking more about this very subject of learning from other people's mistakes in film and television.
One last point I want to ask you is, what do you think people could learn from the mistakes of the Marvels? Like, what can be gleaned from this as a
Oh.
positive?
A great thing you can learn from the Marvels is it's very valuable for all your characters to have a motivation and character arc, because that does not exist in the Marvels. It really
I love
doesn't.
how blunt you were with that.
The positions of who they are and their dynamic is, I would say, identical to how they are at the end of the film. Maybe Carol Danvers understands the value of working into a team, but she solves her problem on her own at the very end of the movie. So I don't know if that's authentic enough for it to
So the
resonate.
characters just don't go through an arc at all.
No, not really at all. Like, even Miss Marvel, when she meets her hero, she doesn't lose any faith in her hero or understand that she's deeper than her hero. So yeah, it's flat line. It's a flat line.
That's about what I expected, I suppose.
So Georgian says, can't stay up for this one, Caffeinated Wolf, if he's on. What are your thoughts on Yong Ye doing a horrendous VA job on Like a Dragon, main character in his upcoming VA job on Persona 3 remake?
I have no idea how Young for those of you who don't know, he's a gaming YouTuber, fairly prominent one. I have no idea how the hell he managed to get a VA gig on the latest Yakuza game. It is, try and think of the worst voice acting performance you have ever heard in your life, and then pretend that one then phoned it in even worse, and that's what it sounds like. I can't even quantify how bad it is. Like, it's really bad. Like, granted, most people that are going to play Yakuza aren't going to play it in English anyway. They're going to be playing it subbed instead of dubbed, which is,
Is that really a thing?
Whatever. Yeah. But that's, I have no idea how he got that job. But it's, I heard the leaked clip of his performance, and it is absurdly bad. It's so bad. He's blocking people that are calling him out for how bad it is on Twitter. And like banning them. I'm pretty sure also banning them from like his YouTube or whatever it is, hiding them from his channel.
That's weak.
It's so horrendous. Yeah, like, no, that's
Take the
weak.
criticism on the chin, dude, and just do better next time. Don't fucking hide behind your platform.
Weak bloodline energy, but clearly he doesn't have the talent. He has zero entertainment talent to any one of his bones or any cell in his body. It's just, he's bereft of entertainment talent. He has no acting talent whatsoever.
Well,
it's really
today's
bad.
The first day I heard of him, so
yeah. I mean, he's a fairly prominent video game YouTuber, but I guess if you don't really watch video game YouTubers, it's not.
I think video game YouTubing is the weirdest thing, because it's like, play the game yourself. If you can't afford it, that's fine. I'm not here to judge your financial situation, but like, if you got a PC and you can run the games, or you got an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Switch and you can get the game, why the fuck are you going to watch somebody else play it? Maybe
he's one of those things.
I can understand that, but
he's not even one of those like let's play people. He's a commentator. So he's like a lot of these channels that pretend to know about geek shit and cape shit and will scream and make 100 videos about a specific actor or actress, but don't actually know what the hell they're talking about. He's one of those people, basically. Just, he's actually more technically left-leaning politically, but he's not really any different. And he's just not good at what he does. And he's really bad at what he doesn't do, which is act. It's abysmal. So that's my thoughts, Cesario Japan.
So he's as good an actor as Chris Tuckman is a director. Got it.
Yeah, there you go. Damn. But that's not entirely inaccurate.
No, I think he should stick to reviews, personally. That's just me. But
yeah, I didn't realize he directed a movie. I stopped watching his reviews
I've seen
years ago,
him,
to be honest.
I've seen the short films he's written and directed, which are very much a first-time writer-director film. I'll put it that way. And he hasn't grown. So.
Yes.
Shit.
I do have to press that button, but I wanted to comment.
I wasn't ready.
Yeah, I wasn't ready. He lost me when he went on movie fights and he kept praising the movie Tomorrowland. And he's like, it's the greatest movie. It's Brad Bird. It's Brad Bird. And when he was asked, like, why is it good? He just kept saying, it's Brad Bird. So I was like, I'm
That's
going
not
to
an
check out
answer.
this movie.
That's like saying it's good because it's Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, I don't like that. But I went and saw that movie and I hated Tomorrowland. And I said, I will never watch another Brad Bird movie and I will never not watch another Chris Stuckman video. And I haven't. That was like 8 years ago. I don't
that
forget
was-
that
Stuck
shit.
to your guns. That's
Yeah.
important.
But I wish him the best of luck. Now,
Yeah.
we do have to press this button for Sir Georgian, though.
Buzz, your girlfriend. Woof.
Damn.
Good
I think it's
old
funny
Captain
that
Marvel.
picture's really just a boy in a wig.
Because it was too mean to do that to a girl, I guess they said.
Yeah, it was too mean to do that to a girl.
I mean, I get it. Now, let's see. Thank you, Sir Georgian. Thank you to Xavier to God. And Sir Georgian, thank you for becoming a member today. He says, Xavier to God says, fuck, Mary, kill, Love and Thunder, The Eternals, and The Marvels.
Kill the Eternals.
Fuck me dry.
Yeah, The Eternals is the worst MCU film by a mile. Like, The Marvels is dumb, but it's not that bad.
I can't even speak on that because I've never actually seen the Eternals. Like, that's how checked out I was. I was like, nah, I'm good. I unfortunately watched Thor Love and Thunder. And I regret every picosecond of that experience.
They made me not like watching Selma Hayek. That's how bad the Eternals is. And I love Selma Hayek.
Same.
I'm sure you do.
She looks better now than she did back in the day. Like,
I don't even see a difference, actually.
I just had zero interest
I
in
see
that
two
film
big differences, but
right from jeez. I had zero interest in that film right from jump. I was like, okay, Marvel, like, I get it. James Gunn made the Guardians of the Galaxy work, and that was a team of like D-listers, and he made them work. But now you are pitching a team of like F-listers on nothing but diversity, and diversity that isn't even canonical to the comic books. So this movie is bound to bust, and that was the turning point, right? When it came to the newer phases of the MCU, that was where the cracks really showed very blatantly.
Oh
It
yeah.
was like, this movie did not perform well at all, and to this date, I haven't even wanted to watch it just for shits and giggles, to be able to like speak on it in terms of intellectual honesty, which is what I always pride myself on, right? So like, you won't see me talking about the Marvels in a way where I act like I know what I'm talking about, outside of like, I know the character of Carol Danvers, sure, but I don't know shit all about the movie because I haven't watched it, and I'm not going to pretend like
don't do
I
it.
know anything. No, I'm not gonna. No, not interested. No, I would rather rewatch. I don't know. I don't even know what I'd rather rewatch, but I'm not watching that. Like, I have no interest, and there's no point. That adds zero value to my life. I don't have a channel of my own where like I could monetize watching that and then like write it off as a business expense. Yeah, like I paid $18 to watch this garbage ass movie, and I can put that on my taxes. No, it's not happening. I have no interest. I'm good.
I'll answer the question. I'll kill the Eternals. I'll fuck Love and Thunder, and I guess I'll marry the Marvels. The Marvels is the best of these three movies. Ugh.
Wow.
You're
That's
not
the
wrong.
best
The
of
Marvels
these
is more
movies.
tolerable than those other two.
Okay.
See, that's what I'm
Alright.
saying when people just start railing about how it's woke and it's the worst thing ever. It's bad for many reasons, but there are
But the woke
shittier
isn't
films
it.
in the MCU.
Yeah.
Oh.
The Eternals actually had like legitimately inserted woke crap, from what I've seen, what I've understood. The Marvels, it really just looks like it's just a really bad movie, and it happens to have 3 female protagonists, and so people are either railing on the fact that it has 3 female protagonists, which shouldn't by itself be an issue, but that's where we're at because the quality of a lot of the products that have come out in the last decade has like attuned us to that. And that's an unfortunate side effect. I want to speak on this for a real quick second. I'm not going to rabbit trail too long, but I spoke earlier about how comic books and comic book related material is primarily a male demographic, right? The women, the female, the girls that were already, fans, that were going to be fans of this kind of stuff, they're already here. And they're every bit as much of fans as we are as men. People like the Soska sisters or any number of other legitimate female geeks, legitimate female fans of superheroes and all of those stuff, whether it's Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or whatever. This kind of crap ends up being a vicious cycle, and people get this like disdain for female geeks because they automatically assume that every single female that claims to be a geek is some fake woke ideologue, right? And unfortunately, part of that is because in many cases that's been the case. That's been true. And that's, I think, the biggest disrespect and the biggest problem that I have with all the garbage that's come out of Star Wars, come out of Marvel and DC in recent years, because it's diminished legitimate geeks. We have real geeks in these spaces who are females that love the same shit that we do for the same reasons that we do, or at least similar reasons, and they've been here the whole damn time. And many of them are very well read. They know what the hell they're talking about. The Saskas are very well read and know what they're talking about when it comes to Deadpool, when it comes to Spidey, when it comes to Daredevil, when it comes to Black Widow. They wrote No Restraints Play, which was the best Black Widow story written over at Marvel, and certainly the last good one that was written over at Marvel Comics. And the way that modern writing is gone, the way these franchises have been handled, it's been done in a way that winds up making a lot of us primarily male demographic fans, because again, that's what these franchises are primarily geared towards. It's made a lot of us have an animosity, or at minimum a guard up when it comes to female fans, because now we just wonder, oh, is she just trying to like sneak her way into here? Is she just trying to take over our space? This is another fake geek girl. There are plenty of them. They're all over the place. But it's
myself
sad.
Okay. I was just saying, to keep myself sane, I just don't operate with a lot of other fans. Like, I just,
That's probably,
like if I'm into something, it's like Spider-Man. I really don't want to.
The healthiest thing.
It's like, with the exception of Ghostbusters people, I don't have I guess James Bond fans aren't that bad, as long as they're not going on about how great Octopussy is or something. But for the most part, I just kind of stay out of the conversation. Thank you. Most people think Octopussy's good. I think it's terrible. Maybe the worst. That or Moonraker. But I never have to watch those movies
Moonraker
again.
you can laugh at more of than
that double take with the doves.
Yep.
The gondola. Or excuse me, the Bondola.
Yeah.
Moonraker also has a bitchin' set of trading cards, which I happen to have most of. Thanks to my
and
friends
not only
from
that,
Don't Eat the Gum.
Jaws' girlfriend stacked, so that's nice.
Oh, Dolly?
Yeah.
I mean, they gave her the right name. Just like Dolly Parton. Our friend Taylor Swift, greater than Disney, Star Wars, and the MCU. Oh, that's an addition to the name. Says,
that's Matt.
We toxic sexist men tanked Marvels, but forgot to tank other female-led films like Barbie, Taylor Swift, Evil Dead Rise, Beyonce's upcoming film. Sir, I have my sign.
I don't even know what to make of that sentence.
Well, I have my sign and my tent, and I'm going to go protest the Beyonce movie. When does it open?
I don't know. Next year, maybe?
Yeah, I'm going to watch it. Dude, I can't even name a Beyonce song from the last 15 years, so I'm definitely not going to go see a Beyonce movie. But hey, I'm happy if you go do. Thank you, Taylor Swift. Also, we have another one that says, I saw it for free. Poorly written, ton of just whatever stuff. Woke is second or third hand. Villain is hideous. Some scenes I didn't mind. Iman is solid.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't give two shits less about Stretchy Hands McGee as Eric so endearingly refers to Kamala Khan as. But everything I've heard is that it seems like the actress does legitimately like enjoy the character and care about playing the character.
Yep.
Unfortunately for her, it's a character that the vast majority of people do not give two shits about because of how Marvel has marketed her. And that's sad. You know, I like when performers have an actual a stake in the character that they're playing, when they actually care about what they're doing. You know,
I need
Andrew
a
Garfield
character-
gave a shit about being Peter Parker. You know, this girl seems like she cares about playing Kamala Khan, but unfortunately, Kamala Khan is a character the vast majority of people don't care about because of how the character had been marketed.
I don't like the audience insert character where they're like geeking out over the superheroes. It to me it breaks immersion in a story, and I find it really frustrating. I put her on the same level as like a Rey because she's like, "You're Luke Skywalker, you're Han Solo. Oh my god, blah blah blah." It's like,
which is hysterical because she
up.
wouldn't know piss all about either of them.
But
as far as
I'll
I'm
be
concerned,
I'll play devil's advocate. I didn't think the girl that played Miss Marvel was as good as everybody else says because she kept going, that was like her whole thing. I'm like, okay, have a different expression. And then, like, when she gets hit, she's like, So I found her quite annoying, to be honest. But I don't want to sit and rail on a 20-year-old actor that's like just barely in anything because whatever.
It's her only role that she's ever had.
The script there was. I only bring this up to you since you saw the movie. There was one really good joke when she's fallen out of the sky and she switches bodies with Captain Marvel, and Nick Fury's like, "Oh, it's just Carol." And she splats into the ground.
Yeah,
I was like, "That's fucking funny."
Yeah, it felt like a King of the Hill type of joke.
Yes, I could see Peggy saying that about. Oh, it's just Bill. Also, our friend Taylor Swift says films are more charming than The Last Jedi. It's got that.
Oh,
yep,
God.
This is a better movie than The Last Jedi. Yep.
I mean, like it. We're using Last Jedi as the bar.
No, we're not. That's the thing. It may be better than that, but it's no Iron Man. It's no Winter Soldier. It's no.
I'm just basing it off
Iron
of the
Man
chat.
3.
I'm basing it off of the chat script.
Okay.
like no, Iron Man 1 should be the bar that these other superhero films are striving to compete against. But they're striving to compete against like dredge.
I wish more places would just try to be like the first Avengers, because I watched that fight scene not that long ago, as in like an hour before the show. That is a good ensemble film that really...
It's so much fun, man. I enjoyed every single Avengers film in theaters, at least upon first viewing. But none of them hit quite as hard in terms of just the overall experience as that first film. That was an event, man.
I saw it 4 times.
That felt like something special. I saw it 3 times. I saw it once with my dad, once with my ex, wasn't my ex at the time, and once with my best friend, who was also a comic book fan. And that movie hit so hard back then, man. The MCU was peak.
Well, at least I put the Avengers in the category like Halloween or Star Wars, or these movies that have to make it. It's make or break. And when they pull it off, it's that much more enjoyable. So, like, people want to shit on Disney, and I believe me, we've made content that does that. But first Avengers movie is one of those like special exceptions where it's like, yeah, this is everything was riding on this, and they pulled it off, and it was good, and I liked it.
Phase 1 Marvel hit so hard. None of the movies were perfect, not a single damn one. But
Iron Man was close.
You could feel, the first Iron Man, man. Like you could feel the sincerity. You could feel the energy. It was still fun.
It was also right. It was new.
Yeah. That too.
Like we got to keep taking that into account. Like the novelty of these movies are what made them hits as well. Because, like, yes, of course we have superhero movies, and yes, we've had multiple superheroes in films, but never, at the time, a 5-movie crossover epic that spanned 4 years and, $100 million a couple $100 million to make happen. Like, it was cool.
Yeah.
Wild Man Beyond, thank you very much. He says this movie failing means no hope for Madam Web.
Madam Web is being produced by Sony. It's a different beast. Though I honestly don't think anybody's going to be going out to see that either. Just like nobody went out to see Morbius.
If
Which
they
actually
put
kind of
Sydney
makes me
Sweeney
sad.
in a sexy enough costume, people will go out to see it.
It's not going to happen.
Oh.
It's not going to happen. Madam Web has never had a quote unquote sexy, truly sexy.
She's also
costume,
never been
outside of
played
it
by...
being just a bodysuit.
I don't even think Sydney Sweeney's playing the Madam Web character. I think she's playing someone else. I think she's Jessica Drew.
Well, Jessica Drew is supposed to be Madam Web in this one. Because Jessica Drew, no, wait. No, it's Julia Carpenter that becomes Madam Web later on.
Yeah, I have a
right.
rule of
I was
thumb.
getting my lore all wrapped up. Yeah, the original
There's so
Madam
many
Web
Spider Women.
dies. This is the freaking problem with Spider-Man. Just erase like 99.9% of them. Bring it back to just Peter, 616 Peter. To hell with the rest of them. Put 'em
I
back
only
with
watch
MJ.
Spider-Man movies. I
Can
don't
we
watch
fix this.
spin-offs or crossovers.
Yeah, that's been the issue with Sony, man. Like they're trying to spin off into characters that have no business being set up yet. Like you haven't been able to finish out a Spider-Man franchise on your own.
Nope. Xavier to God, thank you very much. He says, I heard a funny joke that if you watch Star Wars and replace the Force with the word script, it makes a lot of sense. Also, people are comparing Spider-Man PS5 to Arkham City like they're on the same level. I don't know if that's a compliment for Arkham City or a dig at Spider-Man, because Arkham City is like a God, what is it, like a 14-year-old game?
People are comparing
Yeah.
Spider-Man PS5. Wait, hold on. Is he saying Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2? Because
He
Spider-Man
means
was
the new one. 'cause
okay.
it's,
So Spider-Man 2. Comparing that to Arkham City, I would compare Insomniac's first Spider-Man game to Arkham City on a fairly similar level. Part of that might be because I'm more of a Spider-Man fan than a Batman fan, and I'm willing to admit that. That being said, it was a very tightly told story, fantastic mechanically in terms of the gameplay. The pacing was great. Everything was fantastic about that. I might have disagreed with some of like the story beats that they took. I wasn't a huge fan of the 2 or 3 side missions where you play as MJ and play as Miles. I didn't care for those. But overall, that first Insomniac Spider-Man game was done extremely well. Extremely well, just on objective level. The sequel, on the other hand, I'm sure the gameplay is fantastic and fine, just as the first one was. I don't see a reason why that would change. But story-wise, characterization-wise, and a lot of the other things seem like they went awry. And as a Spider-Man fan, at least everything that I've seen, everything that I've read, if I played that game, I would probably be physically angry because Spider-Man's my guy in terms of Marvel.
Well, I'm not going to spend money on a PlayStation 5. That's the long and short of it. I won't spend any
to
money.
play a game where I'm only playing half of it as Spider-Man and the other half as Miles Morales.
Yep. And then on top of the Star Wars joke, that's actually pretty true. Whether it's script or story, you can replace the Force with those 2 words. And when it comes to writing, much like being a Jedi, yes, you can learn the rules relatively quick, but it takes years to master and do it well. And that's the gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
My ally is the script, and a powerful ally it is.
Yeah. Only a fully trained writer with the script as his ally can defeat Darth Vader.
TLJ Screwjob, $20. Damn.
And a member, thank you, TLJ Screwjob, for joining us each and every week for the last, I don't know how many years. We appreciate you. He says, asked Script Doctor on the High Council a few weeks ago, will Zaslav say, glad bad movies are done. Now on to new stuff. during the next earnings call. Script was more polite than I did, yet Zaslav's real company, real leadership was, wow.
And that's just phase one. The earnings call post Aquaman 2. That'll be something to listen to as well. Because he did throw a lot of shade over at Disney.
It's gonna be interesting. And this is a twofold thing, double-edged really. It'll be interesting how things look after they've gotten all of the stuff that had already been greenlit and paid for and shot and all of that prior to him taking over, or at the very least were already in production when he took over. Once all that's out of the way, and then we're actually in James Gunn new DCU, for better or for worse, what that actually looks like on the financial side. I am curious to see what that looks like, but I think unfortunately for them, it's not going to be enough to get a real return, at least not for a little while. They're going to have to take a couple of just straight L's before they even have a chance of people giving a crap again. Because
their budgets are very controlled right now, I'm hearing.
Are they?
Oh, yeah.
Like interesting. That because based on the so their first few projects, okay, so the Blue Beetle was part of the old thing.
Yep.
So was Aquaman, so was Flash. The first truly new era DC EU, or whatever the hell they're calling it, is going to be Superman Legacy, correct?
Yep.
Followed by was it Wonder Woman with Themyscira, or the Amazons with Themyscira, whatever the hell they're calling it. And then
well, I mean,
was
the
it
second
Batman and
follow-up
Son?
film has not been confirmed, but ideally it's Superman Legacy. Rumor is that the movie is going to be less than 150 million budget wise, but that could be subject to change. But that's apparently the target. And again, if it's an under $200 million budget, that is a better shot at them making their money back in theaters than the 300 plus that's been happening with reshoots and rewrites and extensions.
Which I find incredibly curious, because that means that they are minimizing, or at least they're likely minimizing, the amount of VFX that they're utilizing.
Or they're organizing it to the point where they're not reordering VFX because they've changed their mind. And that's one of the things. Like, even though I know there's been reports that James Gunn, the budgets for his Guardians films were far more than what's actually reported. I think there's a little bit of blurred lines in that area, because James Gunn previses and storyboards every shot, and he gets that done before they even roll film. So that actually saves a lot of money. And he hasn't been reshot and redirected in the same way that like Peyton Reed or Sam Raimi or any of those other guys that were working on the MCU films post his initial termination. So ideally, we're looking at the possibility that Warner Brothers will be doing budget conscious films, and they're not going to release it unless they know it's absolutely ready. James Gunn tweeted recently that, as far as he's concerned, everything is on course still for Superman Legacy to be released on the initial release date. It doesn't, the strikes themselves did not hurt their production schedule, because I think James Gunn had everybody working that he could have working on set design, costumes, previs, everything that he needed to get this film in order while the actors and writers were on strike. So he took advantage of the time that he had, so that to save money and reduce budget costs. So, well, hopefully that pays off in the end. I can't wait to see what the financials are for this once it gets there. I would not be surprised if some of the trades are saying that's going to be a $200+ million movie, because that's what they think is default, and they're just going through basic aggregates. But I suspect that it might end up being closer to $150 million budget or something around that by the end of the day.
Interesting. Very interesting. I mean,
again, the cast is very cheap.
A lot of the, and that makes sense, because it's a lot of new faces, right? Or at least a lot of faces that maybe not completely new, like not unheard of, but you would have to do a little bit of digging to actually have seen them.
Yep.
And that's smart. And I don't think fans always do this thing, and I guess maybe to no fault of their own, where they always just try and cast these big characters with whatever biggest name comes to mind that looks like they might have some semblance of a resembling to them. And that's not necessary. Just get whoever looks the closest and can actually, in conjunction with that, play the character. It doesn't have to be a big name. I get big names can be a draw, but there aren't nearly enough true Hollywood stars left anymore to where that actor or actress's name is the draw for the film. It should be the film being sold based on the film, based on the character. If it's an existing IP, based on just the story itself, if it's a new story, right? Sell it on that rather than selling it on the actor or actress that's playing the lead. That's kind of where we're at now, because there aren't enough big actors or actresses left that can just on their own move a film. Like, I would have told you a year ago that Tom Cruise is the last true movie star. The most recent Mission Impossible underperformed. Frustratingly so for me, because I loved the film. I adored that. I cannot tell you how much fun I had watching that in theaters, because that's my favorite film franchise. And it bums me out that movie didn't do as well as I feel it should have. And maybe that faith is misplaced.
Well, Hollywood's not making stars anymore. They're focused more on the intellectual property. They want to not be held to the standards. Like Bradley Cooper had a brief moment there where he was kind of looking to be a household name and a huge star.
Oh yeah,
he's faded
he
away. There's no one else really contemporary like that. Chris Pratt is a lovable goof guy who's done some decent stuff in Leading Men, but he some of the things that he's done recently, especially his Amazon stuff, did not draw the audience he wanted to. He got very lucky with Mario, but that's more to do with the brand recognition of Mario than it had anything to do with Chris Pratt. Same thing is going to occur with Garfield. I don't know why he's voicing that character, but he is, and it's not.
It seems like an odd pairing to me personally. Yep. Yeah, like I was fine with his Mario. They made it work, but Garfield, I just don't picture. Personally.
Garfield just wants to sleep, and he doesn't care. And
but
you can't have a high energy Chris Pratt guy.
Who knows? Maybe the movie will be fine. Maybe kids will love it. Maybe families will love it. And I guess that's at the end of the day what matters. I'm not entirely sold on Chris Pratt being Garfield, but I
don't know. Well, if you watch it, you'll have to tell me how it is, because I saw the Bill Murray one and that was enough.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Xavier to God says, fuck, marry, kill, and these are costumes. Spider-Man, Batman 89, or Superman 78.
Whew. Marry Superman 78 suit, because that's authentic.
This is specifically Spider-Man the suits.
Yeah, the suits.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Batman 89 you got to kill because it's too thick, bulky, rubbery, and Returns one is a bit more sleek in style.
Well, also Keaton has to turn like this.
Yeah, you can't turn your head in it. So yeah,
you can't do this. That was not a thing. Well, it wasn't until Dark Knight Rises where that was a thing. Is that correct on that?
Dark Knight. It was in the Dark Knight they figured it out, which is funny because I even remember talking to one of the costume designers who I found out later was on for Batman Begins, and I was like, why don't you just separate the neck from the cowl? Because what they actually did in the first time is they built an artificial spine in the back of the cowl so that could help Christian Bale turn his head. It's like you can keep them two separate parts and just have like a little bit of spandex in between to connect them so that you can actually turn the head. But it took them literally another movie afterwards to figure that out. And it was ridiculous. And then what they do, they repeat the same mistake again with the Batman v Superman. Ben Affleck can't turn his head in that cowl.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, kill Superman 78. I'm probably going to take heat in the chat, but it's fine. It's a Tuesday. For some of you all, this may be the most incredible and incredibly frustrating moment of your lives. For me, it's a Tuesday. Marry Spider-Man 2 suit. And I guess fuck Batman 89 suit would have to be my pick. What about you, Jeff?
I will. Sorry, Superman, but I'll kill you, even though you're my
Okay.
favorite Superman costume.
Same.
I like the other ones better. I'm gonna fuck Spider-Man and marry Batman 89 because I like that costume. I think it's epic.
It's a good costume for sure. It's a good
Here's
costume.
the thing about
sitting
it.
still, but it's not very good to act in or motion wise.
I think it like the Robert Pattinson suit when it's lit and it looks whatever in pictures, it's fine. But when
Yeah.
it's in the movie, I think it looks awesome, especially when he's in the cathedral at the end, when he comes out of the flames after he crashes the Batwing right before that, when he's just anything he's really doing, I think he looks cool in it. So I will spend unlimited amounts of money on Batman 89 merchandise. So that's why I gave the answer I gave. Our friend Shrubbles White says 2 hours later, I'll take it. It doesn't matter. Sure, we got that rock button for you. We got many a rock buttons. We also got lame and gay, but no one requested that one tonight. But here's the button you requested.
It doesn't matter.
And
It
here's one more.
doesn't matter what you think.
Fuck Russo.
Yeah, well, he got Lana, so he's winning all the way to the bank.
Well, all right. Like, I'll give him that much, but The Rock was talking shit to him, so I'm gonna take The Rock's side.
Oh, of course. Xavier to God says, fuck, Mary, kill Spider-Man 2, Batman Begins, and Iron Man.
Xavier, what is with you and these freaking
It's
options,
torturing me.
man?
My 3 favorite superhero films.
Like, for real, man. Like,
Batman Begins has a plot hole. Pretty big one.
Which one is that?
Well, I'll tell you off stream. Spider-Man 2, I like a lot, except for the fact that he loses his powers because my feelings. Iron Man is probably more solid character and plot wise out of all 3 of those. But Spider-Man 2's got a lot of good. I mean, Alfred Molina really does make that movie.
Alfred Molina was phenomenal.
So yeah,
Like, it actually pissed me off in Spider-Man No Way Home when they like mock. Even though I get it, like they're mocking the name Otto Octavius. You're talking to Alfred Molina right now. Show some fucking respect. It made me mad. And I also like the line like, Peter, how are you? I'm trying to do better.
I don't
like
think I've watched that movie in 3 years or 2 years, honestly.
I haven't seen, dude, I haven't seen it since the night we did the review here on the channel, which you guys should actually go watch. That was my PlayStation controller. That's fine. You guys should go watch that review if it's still a PlayStation controller. You guys should watch that review if it's still available on the channel. But like Alfred Molina, man, his performance was so good.
So I will marry Spider-Man 2. I don't want to kill either of these movies because I really
You're
enjoy
gonna have
them.
to pick one, man.
All right,
one.
I'm picking Iron Man to kill. Sorry, I like Batman Begins.
Tony, you killed Tony, man.
Yeah, well,
right. It's fine.
Even though this is the most un-Batman thing ever, I do love the line. I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you either. It makes me laugh every time.
It is a good line. It is a good line. So, that's the ultimate fuck you. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna kill you, but I don't have to save your ass. I appreciate that.
Have we all answered?
Yep.
I have not,
right.
But it's fine.
Okay.
I would marry Spider-Man 2, fuck Iron Man, and oh wow. Fuck you, Xavier God. I love all 3 of these movies. I guess, yeah, marry Spider-Man 2, fuck Iron Man, kill. Really? See, the other 2 are interchangeable. I love Spider-Man more than any of those other characters, but I love the first Iron Man film, and I love Batman Begins, but I like Batman more as a character. So probably fuck Batman Begins and kill Iron Man. But that, fuck you, Xavier God. I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate that at all. Why are you putting that kind of decision on my shoulders?
TLJ Screwjob, thank you very much. He says, on Resident Evil 4 Remake, believe me, I wish I could just wish away my feelings, but I can't. The story changes, the character changes, Krauser and Ada's bad VA.
Okay, hold on. I'll give you Ada's VA. They picked a really like lackluster VA for Ada in the remake. Like she just doesn't sound like the character. And that's entirely fair. That is a valid criticism of that game and one that I have and share. But the story doesn't change at all. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I literally just finished the game again recently. And I'm playing through separate ways right now. The story doesn't change. Krauser, he doesn't really change either. Ada's VA, that's fair. Like, she's pretty soulless. Like, there's no... Ada is supposed to sound sultry. She's a femme fatale, and she should sound as such. I don't get any of that from the... I forget the name of the actress that they got for her in the remake. She's not good. Maybe part of it's directorial. I don't know. Regardless, the performance is not good. It's really not good. It doesn't ruin the game for me because I still love the game. I love the remake, but it's one of those things where, like, yeah, this was a shortcoming. Like, I wish they had gone with somebody else, or like that the direction had been different. Because as it stands, like Ada's VA doesn't sound like Ada. She's very dry, very bland. And Ada is supposed to be a sultry, seductive femme fatale that's like meant to be somebody you could believe keeps Leon off guard. And I don't buy it.
TLJ Screwjob also says, I realize that all these things are subjective, but for some reason, I just can't say, yeah, they changed this and that. Some VAs are bad, but it's great.
Yeah, like they didn't. I guess fair enough, to each their own. Like the story is the same. I do not understand some people's criticisms. Like not all, but like some people's criticisms of the remake.
What are you
for
buying,
Resident Evil
man?
4. Dude, the merchant is an underrated character in that franchise.
He's my favorite character
What
in
are you
Resident Evil
buying?
4.
What are you selling? I freaking love the merchant. He's fantastic. And they gave him even more personality, in my opinion, in the remake.
Oh, Script, one last thing before we go off air I wanted to say in front of everybody. Did you notice the inconsistent writing in the Marvels where the Flurkin that took Nick Fury's eyeball, he was like all hugging and cuddly with it? Like, why the fuck would you pet the thing that blinded you?
I know, I don't
I thought
get
that
it.
was so dumb.
I would light the bitch on fire.
Yeah, I wouldn't go, who's a good kitty? Like, fuck that thing, all right?
No, it
That was
took out
lame
your
anyway.
eye. Eye for an eye. What the
Oh,
hell?
and our friend Brett Cohen says, yeah.
Why did you do that to me?
Because Brett Cohen asked.
Brett Cohen, why did you make him do that to me?
I don't know, but I'm glad we did. It sent chills down your spine.
I don't know if I
So-
call it that, but okay.
We have reached the end of our episode. Script, where can we find you on the internet, sir?
You can find me on Twitter. You can go to my YouTube channel and listen to my 11-minute coverage / review of the Marvels. And you can also check out my Patreon, where I have an audio pitch of how to write the ship that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as reviews of screenplays, writing notes, and various essays of the story craft itself for you to all check out. I've got 4 scripts reviews that I have to wait for permission to post from the people that own the screenplays, but they are pending, and I can't wait to get their follow back. They're okay, so that you can read them, not just the reviews, but also the screenplays themselves, so that you can actually learn from those that are good and those that stink at the same time.
I like the way you
All
worded
right.
that.
I'm here for it.
Also, since you're here for that, where else can we find you? Where are you on the internet,
You
sir?
can find me over on Twitter. I am recently rechristened ND Andrew, like for NDA, and then the rest of my name. That's an inside joke over at the Rippaverse, but you can find me over there on Twitter at that. You can find me over on Twitch at Caffeinated Wolf. I stream like once a week over there. I just do mainly Mario Kart with my friends and community on the weekends, it's a good time. We will be having our once annual Elite Cup for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at about the middle of December. I think we're doing it around the 16th. Best racers in this space. We're going to all get together and have it out. We're going to do a 48 straight race set and see who's the best. It's going to be a good time or a really bad time because it's Mario Kart, so it could go either way. Usually the latter, because that game hates me really badly.
If you wanted the best, you should have called me.
I've raced you, Jeff. You're not.
Dude, you've not raced me. We've never played Mario Kart together. We've played Super Smash Brothers together. I've never played Mario Kart with you. Because I've never played it online.
We have played.
We have not.
We have. I'm
we
positive we had. Unless I'm crazy and in a fever dream, I imagine that we did, which I will relent is, albeit a small one, a possibility. Either way, I'd be down to play. I'd definitely be down to play. I need the practice. Yeah, find me over on Twitch, Caffeinated Wolf. Find me on Twitter, ND Andrew. I mainly use my account these days for Rippaverse shit because I ain't got the time for all that negativity. If I'm being honest, Twitter fucking sucks, man. I got better things to do with my life.
Folks, you can find me here on this channel. You already knew that because that's what you're listening to. But we'll be back with some more videos this week. I have 7 pages of Wokebusters left, and then it's going to be out next year. So be on the lookout for that. But if you need something right now, and you know you do, go over to stealingsolo.com. Get yourself a copy of the greatest Star Wars parody since Spaceballs. It's the story of a group of disgruntled Star Wars fans who kidnap Harrison Ford and force him to remake Star Wars in their basement. Folks, if you want a unique Christmas gift to give people that are Star Wars fans, comic fans, geeks, or just people who like good stuff, well, go to stealingsolo.com. You cannot buy that in any store. But go ahead and order yourself a copy now. I ship out books multiple times a week, and the website is powered by Shopify, so you get their award-winning safety and security. And, yeah, get a copy. Tell me what you think of it. And follow us over on Twitter, social media, Rumble, everywhere WCBS is. You should be. So until next time, folks, be smart. Be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.
Excuse me. I believe I asked you to put a chick in this and make her gay.